With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, you pick a McDouble or a McChicken, then get a small fry, a small drink, and a 4-piece McNuggets. That's a lot of McDonald's for not a lot of money.
Price and participation may vary. For a limited time only.
You better not have no plans tonight.
Movie time and it's feeling right.
You're looking for a love that lasts. You'll find it at Romancing the Podcast. Ooh, ooh, baby, had me at hello. Ooh, I love you.
I know.
Ooh, ooh, baby, you're the wind beneath my wings. Ooh, I'll have what she's having.
Thank you for tuning into Romancing the Pod. You had us at hello. I'm Paige Wesley.
And I'm Todd Schlosser. And this week, Paige thankfully made us all watch
That Thing You Do.
All right. So, Paige, I know you've seen this movie before.
Hundreds of times.
I love this movie. When was the first time you saw this movie?
So my dad was on a business trip sometime after this movie had come out, where it was like still in theaters because things used to stay in the theaters a lot longer back in the day.
Yeah.
And he had wanted to see this movie for a long time because what some of you might not know, but if you grew up in the Bay, you might know, Tom Hanks is from the Bay Area. He's like our hometown hero. And specifically, he's like my dad's age, like roughly my parents' age.
Same generation for sure.
Yes. So like when I was in high school, a bunch of my high school friends' parents went to high school with Tom Hanks. That was like a thing.
Oh, awesome.
He's like our guy. And so even though this movie is not set in the Bay, when it came out, our local oldie stations played That Thing You Do as if it was an oldie.
Love it.
As promo for the movie.
That's
so
awesome.
like we all knew that it was happening. So my dad wanted to see the movie, hadn't had a chance to because my sister and I were young and, you know, he was working. And so on a business trip, he had nothing to do in the middle of the day. And he says it's the first time he ever went and saw a movie alone.
Oh, really?
That was like a thing he had never done.
I've totally done that. It's great.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I really quite enjoy it. But he had never done that and went and saw this movie alone. He basically said he was like, it was rainy. He was like an old guy in a trench coat going to see a movie alone. He felt really weird about it.
I got to see my boy Hanks in a movie.
Got to see him. And then they got to the scene where they are all running through the streets because they've heard their song on the radio for the first time.
Yeah.
And he said he just started openly sobbing
Holy
in the
shit.
theater.
Me too, Paige. I cried in the airport today in that scene.
Every time. I cried today too.
I can't help it. It's like,
Yeah.
I think anyone who's ever put out something and received like the landslide of negativity that comes back at you
Yes.
anytime you try and put a little piece of your soul and joy into the world.
Oh, yeah.
Like to see someone do it and for it to be accepted so openly and people are like, oh yeah, this is the shit.
Yeah.
Like that is every artist's wet dream right here. Like I love this movie, even though I realize, and I know a lot of people actually had a trajectory just like this, but this is so uncommon. Like this would never happen.
I think it's uncommon today.
That's what I'm
don't think
saying.
it was uncommon back in the day, but yeah.
There were a lot of people in the 60s that had this same trajectory.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I will talk about in just a second because there's another movie that's a lot like this movie for that exact same reason. But
yeah.
So dad saw this, cried, and was like sad that he was alone watching a movie that he loved so much, like instantly. And literally like came home and like went to the nearest Blockbuster and like sat everyone down to watch this movie. And since then I've seen it literally hundreds. Anytime it's on TV, I stop and watch it. I am compelled to do so. I have bought this soundtrack on CD 3 times because I've gone through 3 CD copies of it, and I've bought it digitally twice, and I regret none of those purchases.
No regrets, Paige, on that purchase.
No, I will say
it.
Right before pandemic, I was introduced to a movie that I had never seen before that is very similar to this movie, like almost beat for beat, but it is a black group like the Temptations, and that movie is called The 5 Heartbeats.
Ooh, know the vibe already based on the title, and I love it.
Yes. And if you like this movie, it does follow a slightly different trajectory in the third act, where in this movie we kind of see it's kind of a complete story of like the band gets popular and then the band breaks up.
Yeah.
In 5 Heartbeats, the band gets popular and then they all kind of go off and do their own things. You kind of see what their life is after, and then they kind of come back together at the end, which this movie kind of does it in epilogue.
Yes.
5 Heartbeats does like a whole act of it.
Yeah, this sort of does kind of what the Jersey Boys does as well.
Yeah. Well, and this predated Jersey Boys too. This was like the blueprint for Jersey Boys.
I mean, I love it. And I do also love Jersey Boys. Although I don't think that Jersey Boys, and I do like some songs from Jersey Boys, but I don't think Jersey Boys slaps like That Thing You Do. Like, that song is a banger.
Here's what I will say. I love the Four Seasons, which is why I love Jersey Boys.
Same.
I feel like it's tough to make an original song that slaps that hard, but I will say 5 Heartbeats also slaps super hard.
Oh, yeah?
Like, the original music is good enough that you're like, oh, damn, all right. Like, and I know that there are some of you listening to this where 5 Heartbeats was your That Thing You Do, and you're like, I've bought that soundtrack 5 times. And I'm here to say those feelings are absolutely valid, and that movie is fantastic. Definitely enjoy it. If you like this and you want something more like this, 5 Heartbeats for sure.
I mean, I'm definitely going to check out the 5 Heartbeats. Are you kidding? That sounds awesome.
You will not regret it, Todd. You will like it a lot, I think.
It also predates this. It came out in 91.
It did. It did. I had never heard of it until I went to go watch it for another podcast because somebody requested it because they knew my favorite movie was That Thing You Do. And I was like, oh my God, like it's another one, but it was earlier, but it is different in some points. But there are a lot of shared plot points that kind of occur in different ways because they are different types of bands or whatever. But I do think that a lot of it is that is how bands got popular back in the day.
Yeah.
And this movie, I think, is very reflective of what that trajectory is like. And if you're super into music of this era, you will see so many bands that have like one song.
Yeah.
And and then covered 14 other songs by other people. And so you have like 15 versions of the same song. But like, there's a lot of one-hit wonders from this era, and they're all really good. But like,
yeah,
I think a lot of them are what this movie is, and I love it a lot. And I do think there's more of a love story than we all remember.
Man, I watched it twice today. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to.
I don't blame you.
I watched it at the airport, and then about half of it in the airport, and then the other half once I was in the air at coming home from Jacksonville. And Natalie and I watched it again before you could record tonight because it's like a great movie and she also wanted to watch it. And the second time I watched it today, I really saw how they telegraph the Faye and Guy love story in it.
They pepper it in way earlier than I remember it. And watching it now, I'm like, oh, it's there the whole time.
It's 100% there the whole time. It is like, oh, Guy and Faye met each other after she was already dating, I don't know, the lead singer guy who nobody cares what his name is. Jamie? Is that who it is? Jimmy, whatever, the second. He goes by the second.
James Mattingly the third.
No, he goes by the second.
Is it second?
He goes by the second. Yes. It drove me insane. I was like, bro, that's called
instead
Junior.
Of Junior.
What are you saying? But yeah.
It is the second. Fuck. I always thought it was the third because that would make more sense. But second, no. Yeah, you're right.
It's crazy. He's like, oh, I'm Jimmy Neutron the second or whatever his name is. I don't know. He's the lead singer, so he doesn't matter. But anyway, I do love, listen, I was a drummer at this time. I was like just getting into drumming at this time because I was a child.
Sure.
And like, I was like, oh, a movie where like the drummer comes in and fixes the song and then the song becomes a #1 hit. Yeah. So we're just pretty much going to rock the life of Phil Collins for like a one-hit wonder like group. Let's do this.
Except for that time when he like killed that person by a lake. Allegedly. I'm kidding.
That 100% did not happen. But for fun, I'm going to drop in the drum solo right now. I can see you drowning in the air tonight. The cops are like, oh, I guess we should have seen that. We should have seen it. We should have read it in the lyrics.
He literally admitted it in the song.
Anyway, but I don't know. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies. I honestly haven't watched it in about 10 years.
Oh.
So like as I was watching through it again, I was like, oh man, this is so good.
It's so good.
And it's like, I don't know. Is Steve Zahn just like a terrible person in real life? Did he kill somebody? Did he run over someone and like Like, did he hit a child at a crosswalk? Like, he is so good in this movie at such a young Steve Zahn age. I don't know how he is not a mega star. Like, he's so good.
No, Steve Zahn's really nice in real life. I've met him briefly. He was very nice. But I met Tom Everett Scott, who plays, I keep wanting to say Skitch.
His name is Guy. He's the main character, yeah.
No, I know. I was like, Skitch, Shades, Guy.
All of those are acceptable names, though, because he gets called all of that in this movie.
All of them. In fact, on Amazon, it says Guy, Skitch, Shades, Patterson.
Yeah.
I met him once at a comedy show and just was not ready for it. And I am usually pretty cool as a cucumber around celebrities. And that's one of the few times I was not cool.
Oh, my God.
I was like, Tom Everett Scott. And he was like, you got all three names. And I was like, yes, I'm so sorry to shout into your face. That Thing You Do is one of my favorite movies of all time. And he was like, all right, cool. And then he just went into the comedy show that I was at and thankfully not performing at. That would have been extra weird, I think.
I love how you met Tom Everett Scott like he meets Del Paxton in this movie.
Yes.
Where he just like finally meets his man, like the guy he looks up to the most. And he's like, hi, how are you? You're the best. I love you. It's great.
Yes, you're right. I did meet him like I met Del Paxton, and he was there to see Rachel, who has been a guest on Horror Virgin and this show. You may remember her from our Immaculate episode most recently on Horror Virgin.
Loved it.
It was because she was shooting, I want to say, her first special.
Awesome. But yeah, I love this movie. It really proves that the drummer is probably the most important piece in a band. And I don't think you can challenge it after this.
I mean, if your band has a drummer, some bands just don't even have them. But if your band has one, it is necessary for them to not suck.
And if your band doesn't have one, by the way, that's the lowest bar. If your band has this instrument in it, that player better not suck, or you're not going to make it. That's what you just said. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, right? It's the truth. Yeah, I do think a good drummer makes a huge amount of difference because a bad drummer makes way more difference than you think.
Yeah. Guitar players can sometimes hide. You may not notice a bass player missing a note, but you'll notice that the drummer doesn't hit the snare. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will.
They're the backbeat. You got to listen back. They actually say that and prove in this movie. You have to listen back because if the drummer doesn't like conform to your speed, you're the one that looks bad.
Yes.
Which is not fair. That's a lot of power that I have back here. But you're going to listen back.
I mean, it's also, I would say, the biggest workout on stage because, like, I've seen, like, when I saw Green Day a couple of years ago, that dude's like 50 and still rock. They have like a camera behind him and you're like, he looks like a 50-year-old dad till he sits down and then just fucking shreds. And you're like, oh my God.
Paige, how do you think I developed this killer body?
Killer physique.
I also ascribe to the Trey Cool cardio technique.
You led us here for you are Spartacus.
Trey Cool is their drummer. He's really, really good, actually. But yeah,
he is really
I
cool.
love that this movie sort of walks through the 60s versions of the steps of a band that I went through. We never like got to the very top like they do, but like a lot of the steps we got to. And like when you meet the first manager guy who like pulls up in like his van and makes them stew and offers them a contract, you're like, this is, I'm sure it's so different now. It's the exact same. Like that is every manager and like local like show promoter I've ever met has been someone who's a little bit crazy and just like really likes music like that and wants other people to love it. Like they're some of the best people. Some of them are predatory, but like most of them are just the best people.
Well, and it's not just music because that's it. You meet people's comedy managers sometimes and they're not, they are that level of eccentric, but they're persistent as hell.
Yeah.
And they believe in the person that they're representing. And that is what does it, oddly enough. But yeah, it's fun. I think this movie is really fun to me the longer I have been in the entertainment industry of like how many things you're like, oh yeah, that's not just music. That just is. It happens to everybody. If you perform live in some capacity, this will happen to you kind of.
Oh yeah. I'm sure that this sort of thing happens more to comics now than it does to musicians.
Yeah.
But only because like I would say musicians are less flash in the pan than they used to be.
Well, and you have a lot more leeway to create your own platform
Now.
through social media as a musician. And I think comedy's getting there, but in a very kind of different way. And it takes kind of a different social media muscle.
So the paradigm of music shifts over time, and it's really fun because record labels used to develop and nurture talent. That went away. Right? In fact, in the 60s, they didn't do a lot of development and nurturing talent, which you see in this. They found people.
They pluck people who are ready and then just promote them. Yes.
And then largely it was just that one song they wrote and that was it. And they were flash in the pan. That was it.
Yep.
And then in the 60s or in the late 70s, early 80s, that changed. We got bands like Journey that were like studio musicians that were like, they worked for a long time and eventually became Journey. Right. So they wrote some of the best music. And then it became more about the single when Napster became a thing and then Apple music became a thing, and record labels still had a lot of control, right? And then as you democratize the creation engine and everyone can create their own music at a professional level, and then everyone starts putting their music online, this crowdsourcing of the patron model that record labels used to have a stranglehold on because they were the only ones with money.
Right.
Well, now artists can take their shit right to the source and sell it directly. And a lot of people have been able to develop their craft over a long period of time because of that, because of fan support. That's essentially why the podcast still exists.
Yeah.
Because the listeners still support and love it, and we create it for them. I love that the creation engine has gotten so much cheaper that anyone who wants to do it can put it out there and sort of build a platform and life about it, or life around it. And I think that's awesome, but it's just fun to watch the way that changes in music. It's weird. It's fun though.
It is. And it is fun. And I do think it has ups and downs. It has good and bad parts about it because it does make it more difficult to make a living doing it because it is so spread out. Your likelihood of hitting it big enough to make enough money to pay to do it full time, tough.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we got on this subject, but actually, I kind of wanted to bring it back to Steve Zahn, if that's all right, because I don't think we ever closed the loop on how that dude is not a megastar.
So good.
Is it just because he doesn't want to be? I could also see that if he's a decent dude and everyone works with, likes working with him, so it's not that sort of a problem, that he just doesn't really care about being a leading man famous dude and just wants to be an actor who, makes money and can do that life.
I'm going to give you an answer you're not going to like, but is going to be the true one. First of all, he works all the time.
No, I know.
Dude is working steadily more than almost anyone else. I love Steve Zahn. I think he's hilarious.
Me too.
He's great in every movie. He will never be a leading man.
Well, not anymore. He's too old now, but he never hit that.
Even back then.
Is he too short? Is it because he's too short? How dare you?
He's too short.
How dare you?
And his face is too much of a character face and not a leading man face. And again, these are things the industry will say. I love Steve Zahn.
Me too.
He would never carry a movie. He's too good as the best friend. But here's the thing. If you make millions as the best friend, why do you care? Be the best friend and take the money.
I think that he 100% is happy with his life. Yeah.
I think so
but
too.
if he led a movie page over a beach, when that movie looked back, they'd only see one set of footprints. You know what I'm saying? Because Steve Zahn carried it the whole way. Anyway,
I think you would want to see that. I think I would go see that. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people would want to see that. I don't think it would do especially well.
It wouldn't do well.
I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. But he's just so funny and charming in this movie.
Controversial statement. If he was the age he was in this movie right now, he could have that career. But at the time,
I could see
he could
that.
not.
It was different in the 90s, man. You had to be like a Brad Pitt kind of thing.
We're a lot more accepting of somebody who doesn't look like your stereotypical leading man handsome dude than they were back in the day. Unless you had some other sort of talent. Because I feel like Tom Hanks is not necessarily stereotypical looking, but he's got all that charisma. But he's a generation kind of
he is a generation older than him.
Steve Zahn is the generation between us and our parents, basically. Yeah.
Tom Hanks is your parents' generation, right?
Yes. And Steve Zahn is in between my parents and us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. He's I don't know, Generation X, whatever. What was in between?
Yeah, he's Generation X.
But anyway, I
Yeah.
think he was good. I also love him in Sahara, guys. If you haven't seen Sahara, go check it out. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, is there anything else we need to say about this?
Oh, Ethan Embry as the bass player who doesn't have a name.
Oh, Paige.
He's also gone on to have a wonderful That Guy career and is in way too many movies that I love.
Everyone in the band is great in this movie, all the way down to Wolfman. And I think that
Yes.
you say he doesn't have a name. His name is T.B.
B. Player.
That is his
The
name.
bass
He
player.
He is in the credits as T.B. Player, and I thought that shit was hilarious because, yeah, who cares about the bass player's name? They're only half the rhythm section, guy. I don't know. I thought it was funny because most people don't care about who the bass player is. It really is probably just the drummer who cares who the bass player is.
Well, and he seems to be the only one that talks and hangs out with him.
Yes.
Which is other than Chad, who was the other drummer.
Yeah.
And so, like, the fact that the movie holds to not giving him a name for so long, incredible.
The whole movie, we never learn his name.
We
That
never
man
learn his
is a war hero, Paige, and the movie
Yes.
never names him.
Even in the epilogue, they call him
Yes.
the bass player.
They're like, TB Player went to Nam and got like 3 golden or purple hearts or what. I can't remember what it was. It was amazing.
He gets 2 Purple Hearts, I think.
God, he gets shot in his butt cheeks. Like he gets both of them.
Yeah, each one,
Oof.
each cheek.
Yeah, he's now a building contractor in Orlando, Florida, is what it says. I wrote all of them down because I was like, this is great. I love this.
But I love that because I feel like because of how many one-hit wonders there were back in the day, every once in a while you'll meet someone this age and they'll be like, yeah, I was in a band and there was a hit. Like that weird Zodiac Killer documentary where it was like, yeah, she always wanted to be a star. And you're like, what? And then it turned out she had a hit single and like back in the 60s with some girl group that then immediately disbanded because she got pregnant. And you were like, what? But there's a million of those.
Right.
That sometimes you'll just meet people and they'll be like, yeah, back in the day I was in a girl group. Here's my gold record. And you're like, what?
It's like that guy who was in the 60s band, the Grassroots or whatever, and now he's like this
Creed
famous
Bratton.
actor. Yeah, it's Creed
Creed
Bratton from The
Bratton.
Office. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
so
love
like
the Grassroots.
100%.
Yes.
That does happen. And those people do go on to do other things.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You got a whole ass life to live.
Yeah, the Grassroots charted frequently between 1965 and 1975. They were put together by Lou Adler. Come on.
Oh, Lou Adler put together a lot of people.
He did.
But yeah, no, the Grassroots fucking slippity slap.
Yeah, and then Creed Bratton, of course, came on, did The Office and has done a bunch of stuff since
To
then.
play
But-
himself. So good.
Yeah, he's Creed fucking Bratton. Anyway, I also love how like historically accurate this movie is with like all the music stuff.
Yes.
Although there's no 60s music in it, it's all like very like to the time. It feels very of the time, but also the instruments you see are of the time.
In the soundtrack, they have all of the songs. So
Yeah.
in this movie, there are almost entirely fake songs. Even just diegetic in the background of scenes.
Yeah.
Fake songs, fake bands. And they are all on the soundtrack, including one by the Herdsmen, which is Jimmy's new band.
He gets signed with Playtone after he quits.
Again.
And then, yeah.
Right.
Because they know he is like an art, like he is the creative engine that wrote the song. They're going to keep him around.
Yeah.
And probably hire a producer to help him like hone the songs and make them poppier.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And on the soundtrack, you have his hit
Yeah.
by the Herdsmen that is literally in the movie in the background.
Yeah.
At one, but just like random, but you hear it and they recorded it with the same band that doubles for the Wonders, so it still sounds like Jimmy. Like the attention to detail in this movie is incredible.
Yeah, I really loved it.
Yeah.
Also, I think this movie may have spawned my love of Ray-Bans. Although they're not Ray-Bans, they're like Foster whatever. I can't remember.
Foster Grants.
Yeah, they're Foster Grants or whatever.
Yeah.
But they look like Ray-Bans. I love them.
Yeah, well, Ray-Ban would popularize that look later in that same decade. But yes, Foster Grants came first.
Yeah, man.
There you go.
Love them. But Paige, do you want to perhaps go through this movie scene by scene?
Indeed. We open with, again, a fictional song for this movie called Lovin' You Lots and Lots.
Yeah.
And we get a montage of Guy's family's appliance store.
Yes.
And we watch him working with customers, selling things, and kind of working with his dad. So we know that it's his dad's appliance store. His dad obviously wants him to inherit it. He's not gonna, because at the end of the night, he turns out the lights except for the one on the sign.
Exactly.
Because he will have to go up and turn that back off. And he goes downstairs to drum along with his favorite Del Paxton album.
Yeah. Del Paxton was like a trumpet player, like a jazz trumpet player, I think. Mm-hmm. And he's just like super into jazz.
A fictional one for the film. Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He sort of serves as the goddess, though. Like, if you're looking at the story circles,
Right,
he is like
yes.
the meeting of the goddess, even though it's not romantic. Sometimes it is, but it's not a romantic like that. It's just like someone he's looked up to for so long who gives him great advice.
Right.
And like, I don't know. I love it. I love the relationship he has with him at the very end of the movie. You're like, this is great.
Yeah, it's a great Easter egg to see it literally in the first scene.
Yeah.
To then have it cyclically come all the way back at the end.
Yeah.
But his dad calls. He has to go up and turn the sign off. We cut to the next day where he pulls up in front of a drugstore you can eat at, which is not a thing that we have nowadays, but is a thing they had back in this
the day. Yeah.
And I know because my great grandfather was a fry cook at a Walgreens, because you used to be able to eat at a Walgreens.
What? Really?
I don't know. He just told us this one day. He was like telling us his whole wild life story. He's like, and then I lived at a brothel for a while, and we went out west, and I was a fry cook at a Walgreens. And I was like, okay, grandpa. And then we found out that he might not even really be our grandpa, because my uncle did a 23andMe that had some interesting results.
Okay. I don't know where to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you guys all right? Did you guys take this hard? Like, what happened?
Oh, we're fine. He was an asshole. It was kind of a relief. Anyway, he worked at a Walgreens, so you could eat at drugstores. He goes to a drugstore where the rest of the band is sitting and trying to figure out a name. Now, Guy is not in the band at this point, but he is, I believe, one of their friends from high school.
Yeah, they sort of know him. I don't know if he's in high school with them or if they just recently graduated and he's just like working a job. Yeah.
Yes.
I get like he might be 2 years out of high school though. Like, he's not much older than that.
Well, we know that they are, well, I guess it depends on your drinking age. I would guess that they are all 21 or thereabouts. If not 21, then close to it.
Yes.
20-ish. But mainly because they are often playing in bars, they are often seen drinking, they're often ordering drinks, and no one is giving them any guff about it. Now, this could be at a time when a drinking age was 18, so that's possible too, because those have changed over time and some states have different laws. But I think the movie depicts them as being 1 or 2 years out of high school, but these are all kids that are local kids who are probably not going to go to college, because that was not necessarily the path that they could afford to take at the time. That's part of why the bass player joins the army.
Yeah.
That's why Faye is Jimmy's boyfriend, and they are all they probably knew each other in high school, probably were also in bands in high school.
Yeah.
Now they're out, but they're not college kids. So either they're the same age and not enrolled, or they're slightly older, but I think it sounds more like same age, not enrolled.
Yeah, that's what I got too. But I mean, they're like, this is the 60s, man. Like, you could work as a fry cook at Walgreens, undercover be the Zodiac, and support a family that eventually goes on to give birth to one of Paige's parents.
Right? You could.
Do you like how I just like casually implied that your granddad, who's possibly not your granddad, is also the Zodiac?
Look, it's entirely possible, man. I mean,
where was he? Was it California, Paige?
No, he started out in like Oklahoma and then made his way over, but the Walgreens was in California.
It all checks out, guys.
So it all checks out. I mean, I do share a birthday with Charles Manson, so like anything's possible.
I didn't realize you were related to Ted Cruz, Paige.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about that part of the family.
I wouldn't either. But when they're in the store, they're like talking about what to name the band, and they're like, the Corvettes. I think Giovanni Ribisi says the Corvettes. And then Jimmy Neutron, or whatever the fuck his name is, he's the lead singer.
James Mattingly the second.
Whatever, the
Jimmy.
second. The second says, you mean like the Chord Vets? You know, like a musical chord? And they're like,
you can't get away from the puns.
No, stop it. But Paige, and I know what you're saying about the puns. He's very pun heavy with all the words.
Well, the bands at the time were. This is a very historically accurate piece of this movie.
His band, the Herdsmen, is like heard, like he heard it through the grapevine, Herdsmen.
Yes.
So like he never let go of that.
He didn't.
Which I thought was very funny. I love the Oneater stuff. It's so funny.
Hey, that's Onetters.
That's my favorite rebuttal to it. It's like someone says their name wrong and then he says it even wronger.
Yes. But regardless, they are kind of chatting with Guy, who is at the counter. They're at a booth. Guy's a drummer. They have another drummer named Chad, and they're kind of like, hey, if you want to come see our show tonight, we're playing at this thing. You can see how a real drummer does it. It's playful banter, but they are clearly friends.
Yeah, Giovanni Ribisi, who eventually gets replaced by Guy, gets replaced because he breaks his arm. Like, they're all friends.
Yeah.
Like, they're just, like, playfully ribbing each other, you know?
Yeah. But so he goes back to the appliance store to work with his dad.
Yeah.
He walks in late because he had stopped to have breakfast and then goes in.
His dad is very funny. And his dad is like, I thought the store opened at 10.
Yep.
And he goes, yeah, and it's a good thing. And he looks around and it's like empty. It's just like his family who is like staffing the store. There's nobody else in it. So I thought it was really funny. Every time they like show the dad, he is like sort of played as a fool. And I love that.
I do. Well, he's played as that guy of like good American work ethic, and you'll take over the store and your son will take over the store. And it's because he's very stuck in that mindset. He doesn't really understand his son, although by the end of the movie, when his son's on TV, fully support, fully excited, fully behind it.
Yeah.
But when it's in its infancy, they don't understand him. And that's just kind of...
Which makes sense because your dad is like concerned that you'll be able to take care of yourself when you're gone.
And eat
So
food,
like
yeah.
once you prove to your dad that you can make money with the art you create, they're going to be way more supportive of the art you create.
Sure.
If that makes sense. Because for them, I don't really
100%.
care. You know, like I just want you to be able to take care of yourself after I'm gone. So however you do that, I'll be supportive of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand why a lot of parents are like, maybe don't just look at me like a dick and be like, the band's gonna make it, Dad. And like, cause it's not Todd. It's not younger me.
The odds are not in your favor.
Right.
They're not. Sometimes you beat the odds, but they're not in your favor. And
You have no idea how close I was to being able to tell my dad I told you so.
Oh.
Like we got signed, we had an album out, we were touring, and nobody bought it, Paige.
I mean,
I was so close. Had like 500,000 people bought that record. I could have been like, Dad, look. And he'd have been like, all right, fine.
we had a gold record.
Yeah, exactly. But none of that shit happened. But I will say this, like, I do wish my dad was around so I could just give him a big I told you so with the podcast. But I know he would be supportive of it. Like, he would 100% be supportive of it because of what I just said. He would be like, yeah, you're able to take care of yourself. I don't give a shit what you do. I just wanted you to be able to, like, support yourself so you'd move out of my house, son. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, I get it, Dad. I get it.
I mean, that is the one great thing about having a dad who is alive and supportive.
Wow, deep. That hurt. Oh, really? That's
so
a great thing about
sorry.
having a dad that's alive, Todd.
Yeah, it is. I can take him and make him judge roast battle. That happened one time.
Oh.
Or like go to breakfast with other comedy friends, and it's a good time.
Yeah.
It is nice.
Yeah.
Sorry you're missing out on that.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, back in the movie, the bass player and Giovanni Ribisi as Chad are like, what's the word?
They're jumping like...
They're jumping over parking meters, but they're like leapfrogging. They're leapfrogging
Yes.
over parking meters.
Yes.
So like hands on the parking meter and then over and through your legs. My sister and I, after seeing this movie, have tried this many times.
It's too tall for you, Paige.
We have gotten hurt every time.
Yes.
And don't do this, guys. This is how Chad breaks his arm. And you get to hear Ethan Embry with one of his best lines in the movie, just like, hey, guys, Chad fell down. Broke his arm.
Yeah, don't do this.
Don't do this. It's how Chad breaks his arm. And so immediately Jimmy and Lenny have to go to the appliance store to basically be like, will you please, Guy, play drums with us tonight? Because Chad broke his arm doing something stupid.
I love when they're in that store and he like shakes them down for buying 2 record needles.
Love it.
And a clock radio.
And a clock radio.
And Steve Zahn's like, oh, do you want us to buy a washer too? Like, he's like, no, we're not going to do that. And then immediately he's like, all right, fine, we'll do it. Fine. But also he didn't realize, I think it was in, I don't know, some like kids show that they were puppets.
Yes, it was Venus and Steve. It was his grandma didn't realize they were puppets.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So silly.
Yeah. Which it's a lot like, so my dad introduced us to a crazy TV show from a little after this time period called Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp, where it's it's a chimp dressed up like a secret agent, and then they like give him like bubble gum or jelly beans.
Oh, I thought he was a secret chimp. Like he was like pretending to be like a regular dude, but actually he's a chimp.
Yeah, no, that's
Wait,
like, but it's played by a chimp.
okay.
Yeah, and it's a chimp, but then they like dub a guy's voice over it, like, thanks for the files, Linda, I'll get right on it. Like that kind of like.
They Mr. Edited a chimp into a TV show?
There's a trailer of it on YouTube if you are so inclined in your free time. But yes, Lancelot Link, secret chimp. But there was all kinds of random shit on TV at this time because TV was new and you could do anything. Anyway, sits in for Chad. Now, here's my question to you, because this has famously happened. It happens basically to the Beatles because they lose a drummer and gain a drummer and then they get famous.
Peter Best. Yeah.
Yep. So many bands lose one member of the band right before the fame happens.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite version of those?
Cole Simmons.
Who is Cole Simmons?
He was the singer we got rid of right before we got like.
So your band,
we like sort of blew up here locally and then got signed. Yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah, great guy.
That's
seriously
amazing.
Great guy.
Yeah, sure.
Not as good of a singer as Chris Faust.
Hey, that happens.
Yeah, but for me in like real life, it's Pete Best.
Yeah,
because when the Beatles blew up, he released an album of his songs called "Best of the Beatles," which was true. He was Pete Best, and he was
hilarious.
in the Beatles.
Well, that is true. And a lot of the songs that the Beatles would later get famous with, they did play with Pete Best, especially when they were playing in Germany. And there are German versions of them that are weirdly good. But anyway, I think mine is No Doubt, where Gwen Stefani's brother left the band like right before they got crazy famous.
Yeah, because he was like, no, it has to be ska. And Gwen Stefani was like, the band would just rather it be good music. So they kicked him out, and then they got real famous.
What if I wrote this incredible breakup album and then they got really famous?
Yeah.
And then I love the Destiny's Child switch up that nobody talks about anymore, because back in the day, if you were an early Destiny's Child fan like I was, there were four members of Destiny's Child. 2 departed, and then we got a new Michelle, and it then became Beyonce, Kelly, and Michelle, and that's the one people remember. But there are 2 ex-Destiny's Children, and again, they were famous, but they weren't not as crazy famous as they then became.
Are they considered like Destiny's stepsisters?
Yeah, they aren't like invited to other stuff, but they crop up every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, but like Destiny's Child isn't really together anymore, but they'll occasionally do things. You know, that's why I ask, like, do they get included sometimes or like?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Not usually. No.
I wondered if it was like a bad falling out, or maybe they were just like, listen, it's your show and we can tell, so we want to leave, you know?
They were very, very young. This was like early in the career. And there's like one album with all 4 of them. And it is the album with like Say My Name and Bills, Bills, Bills.
Yeah, that's the first time I ever heard them.
Right, but almost immediately after that album is when the split happens. There's also, if you're a Panic at the Disco fan, this is a real crazy one where they got super famous and then they split in half. And before they did, put out an album that's like a real wild half and half album where like half of it is kind of like Beatles psychedelia but done through a modern lens, and the other half is a lot more emo. And then when the band spliggity splits between the 2, you end up with Brendan Urie and one guy going off and doing their own thing, and then the other 2 guys made almost like a 60s throwback band for a while. Yeah, it's always fascinating to me when people leave bands and they suddenly get famous.
I mean, it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
Any hoodle. So he's like, all right, buy this clock radio, buy these record needles, and then I will play for your band. Cool. So he shows up that day in the garage to kind of like practice it out. And they're like, cool. It took Chad a week to learn that. And I was like, I don't even think it would take me a week to learn that. And I'm not a drummer.
Paige, if you're not a drummer, I have good news for you. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to learn how to play this song, because that's how long they worked, the actors, to learn how to play their instruments
That's fair.
They do. Because they actually are playing them.
That is true. And just to look like they're playing them.
They are.
Yeah.
Which I really love that they put that effort in and the time in.
too.
And they also like did the same with like the instruments they're using. Like they found instruments that were like from the time. I love it.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, because they do, this is the best version of this, and we've brought this up in a number of musicals that we've done and a lot of movies where people play instruments. Tom Everett Scott does learn to play drums incredibly well. His drumming is featured through most of the movie.
Yeah.
However, for everyone else, and Steve Zahn can also play guitar. Everyone else learns just to be able to look like they can do it.
Yeah.
The audio is not them live playing, with the exception of a couple pieces of Tom Everett Scott. That is the best way to do it for a movie, because then it looks very realistic, but it also sounds good.
Yeah.
So they are playing and singing live and then dubbed back over with another band that we'll talk about in Fun Facts.
Nice. You looked it up?
Oh, yeah, I have known this for a long time because I then became a fan of that other band. And if you are a fan of this movie, you should check them out. Unfortunately, they won't be making more music because
he died
the person
during
largely
COVID.
responsible for this has passed away.
Yeah.
However,
It's Fountains of Wayne, though, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah. And when you realize which one of them wrote it, you'll laugh at the way this movie treats the bass player. Let's just say it that way.
I think it's even funnier,
Me too.
yes, because he was the bassist. But we'll talk a little bit about how that comes to be in Fun Facts.
Heck yeah.
Because it wasn't a like, we heard you and we're hiring you, because Fountains of Wayne didn't exist yet. It was happenstance, but
nice. Yeah.
definitely worth talking about.
Let's table it, but I love it. I can't wait.
So as he finishes drumming, he's like, wonderful. But it's clear in this moment that he is a superior drummer to Chad. He picks it up easily. He's got more skills. He's probably got more experience.
Paige, I got very lucky, and literally the high school, my public high school had one of the best drum instructors in the world that worked there. I got very lucky. So I am pretty good.
Right.
I've had this happen to me where
Sure.
I had to step in and help play for somebody, and then they were like, hey, can you come back and just sort of keep coming? And you have to be like, no, I can't. You paid me to do this one thing and I cannot. Although if I was in this guy's situation and I'm like, oh, this song's a hit, it's going to be a ride, I would stay.
Sure.
But normal, it's never that. It's
no,
it's never that.
this happens to me with writing jokes a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure any creative skill or talent like this that not everybody can do. This kind of stuff's going to happen because people need it.
Yeah. Anyway, as he finishes learning, he says, oh, wonderful. And they're like, oh, that's it. The Wonders. But of course, Jimmy is stuck on puns. Wonders, like O-N-E. And they're like, yeah, it looks like the Oneaters. Too late. The contest is that night. And we are already there listening to the previous acts, which are not great.
It is, we have to say, it is Faye that comes up with the name.
Yes.
Which I think is important.
It is important.
Yeah.
And this is also where, because we also saw when they're in the diner, they're all kind of playfully ribbing each other. And she walks by and just says, I hope you enjoy and have a great breakfast.
Yeah.
Just nice. They're friends. It's nice. She clearly, I would say he is her favorite member of the band outside of Jimmy. And it is very obvious, even from early days, that he's just the one that she's like, he's cool.
Yeah, they're playful with each other too. It seems like they were maybe friends in high school that didn't stay friends after high school, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. There are people that I think if I ran into from high school, I would have this kind of a relationship with of we cool. You were cool back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we see a couple different acts. We meet Guy's girlfriend, played by Charlize Theron in one of her first films.
Yeah.
And she is barely in this movie, but great every second she's on screen.
She is great. And I have seen this person so many times in my life. And it is the girlfriend who is too good for the rock star she's dating.
100%.
And it's always that person is always wrong about their value, what they bring to the table. The guy you're dating, or honestly, there was a girl in my band at the time. So I've seen the other side of this where it's the guy who's there and he's like, whatever, I'm too good for this or whatever. You're not too good for this, bro. If you were too good for this, you'd be on the stage. I don't know, this whole attitude drives me insane.
Well, it depends. I kind of get where she's coming from because a lot of bands are bad.
Yeah, a lot of bands are bad.
This is not one of them. She guessed wrong.
Yeah.
But I could see someone making that guess. She doesn't do it in a nice way. But at the point that she leaves, they are still maybe playing in restaurants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. If you're with someone who can't at least hold space for you to be the person that you think you are inside, then you need to break up with that person, whether they find a super hot dentist. I get it. That dentist was smashable.
Oh, a hundo.
I understand why Charlize Theron was like, no, I'm out. Thank you.
Well, but also not everyone wants to date a person in a band, full stop, good or bad. I'm one of those people.
Oh, because they're always on the road. Yeah, that would be terrible.
I told someone this the other day because I know someone dating somebody in a band, and I was like, I have a no bands rule because only one of two things happens. Either the band is bad and I don't want to have to listen to it and pretend like it's good. There could only be one of us in this relationship chasing impossible dreams, and I'm already that person and also have a day job. I don't really have space for more impossible dreams. And that's just me. That's a thing that I have to declare for my life and my relationships. Secondly, if they're really good, you're gonna get cheated on. So why? There's no upside to dating somebody in a band.
If they're really good, you're going to get cheated on. You think?
Because they're going to go on the road and there's going to be groupies and there's going to be a million things. And unless you are somehow indispensable to them, you will get dumped. See it all the time.
Oh, I'm sure it happens all the time. But I'm sure there are people who can like make it work.
Sure.
I don't know who those people are, but I'm sure there are couples who have made it work. I don't know.
I think if you're willing to drop everything and be like Faye and go on the road with them, that's a lot easier to make that work.
Absolutely.
But that ain't going to be me. So no bands for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And some people just realize that about themselves and realize they shouldn't date people in bands. And I don't hold that against her, especially because did you see that dentist? Like, did you
I
see that
got it.
dentist?
I was like, oh my God. Like,
do you know how expensive dental care is? Come on.
guys, the perks alone.
Yeah.
That dentist couldn't wait to get in her mouth. But when you see Tina's brain like fully reset when she sees her dentist,
Yeah.
you understand completely when she's doing her hair that night talking to Tom Everett Scott on the phone. You're like, oh, she is out of this relationship.
She gone.
100%.
She gone. But okay, and this is a crazy thing because now watching this as a kid when I watched this, she was the villain, right?
She is the villain.
Hear me out, Todd.
I'm hearing you out, but you're going to be wrong.
I'm not gonna side with her. Watching this as a kid, I was like, how dare she not know how awesome Guy is? And that's true. She had no idea.
Yeah.
But I want you to think about this from her perspective as let's call her somewhere between 22 to 25-year-old in 1963 or whatever. She has no guarantee that he's going to be successful. She doesn't seem to like him or enjoy any of the things he does.
She made the right call for her as a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she is a boring person who needs a boring doctor to take care of her. And that's the society she was born into. So that's what she values. Hell yeah. I get it. I got why she went with the dentist. Like, Paige, I've been a drummer my whole life. You don't think this has happened to me a ton?
Well, yeah, as a kid, I could not understand how she could ever leave him. And then as an adult, I was like, well, that dentist is going to make money forever. And she just wants to be a pretty housewife. Like, that's clearly all she wants. So, like, yeah, this is a perfect match. Good for her. Glad she found the dentist. Glad she broke up with him because he deserves to be with a Faye. Like, that is a better match. It's great that she's out of the way, and I'm glad that she's happy with her life.
Are we actually technically in the scene where Tina meets Faye? Because in that scene...
Yes, we're about to get into it. Yes.
In that scene, Guy is like introducing them, and he literally says, hey, Tina, meet Faye. And I was like, Tina Fey!
Yes, that does have... It's literally because he like sits her down, and she introduces her, and then Tina says the thing that immediately signals that you should not date someone in a performing arts profession, or if you're going to, have an understanding that you will not attend shows and gigs, because she just says, do you know how long this is going to take? And I was like, oh, if I had a nickel.
Paige.
If I had a nickel.
Can I ask, does Jake go to every one of your performances?
Jake goes to none of my performances, and that's why we have a happy marriage.
Yeah. You know who didn't go to every one of my performances? My girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, it's just too much to ask of someone.
It's awful.
Like, Faye is into it and she loves going to them.
Right.
So I don't think it's too much for her. But if, like, you're an introvert or don't love loud clubs or, like, whatever, like, you're not going to want to go to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't hate her because she didn't want to be there. I hated her because she did not care about her boyfriend's, our hero's dream.
Sure.
But I understood why she was like, this isn't my scene.
Then it's a good reason for her to get out of the way. So good.
Yeah.
But here's so Faye eventually gets a job within the ecosystem of the show, which makes it a lot easier to be there.
She's the costume mistress. I'm not sure that she so much has a job. I mean, we do see her wrangle sunglasses one time.
Yeah, well, she like adjusts jackets. She makes sure they're all set before they go on stage.
That's true. Yeah. So I guess she does have an actual job. You're right.
She does have a job later. Anyway, the show goes on. He starts playing too fast. It goes great. They catch up with him and they win the contest.
Paige, okay, I have to talk about this.
Yes.
Because they get heckled. There's a heckler in the audience. The band before them is the mariachi. No, it's not even really mariachi. It's like
it's the brass band.
It's like a brass band,
It's
right?
like Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
And before that, they play what I can only imagine is what a lot of 60s music was, which is very, very boring.
It's if you've seen Inside Llewyn Davis, it's that music.
It's like sorbet for the brain between courses. It's like the worst music you'll hear. So anything you hear after it is amazing. And that's when you hear the first time through the faster tempo version of that thing you do.
And I would say he heckles the host. He doesn't heckle the wonders.
Paige, that's what I was going to get into. Yes.
Yeah.
He heckles the host, and the host's response.
I'll kick your ass.
Man, there is something going on between the heckler and the host that neither of them are willing to admit to yet, but I got some real will they won't they vibes from those two guys.
Maybe. I do love that heckler goes on to be their number one fan.
He's their first fan.
He's their only fan. Yeah. He's their first fan. Anyway, they win and they get a gig at Villa Piano's down by the airport, which sounds delicious.
Can I just say this?
Yes.
They play the song. The host rushes on the stage and declares them a winner. Did they play last?
Wicked!
Were there bands
so wicked.
Were there bands that were supposed to go on after them that were like, well, I guess fuck us because that was so good. Anyway.
Well, and I was like, does that one girl with the dial declare every winner?
But she was doing.
Like, is she the lone picker?
Well, no, I don't know. I mean, yeah, kind of, because she was doing the meter, right?
Right.
But like, that is just that woman's opinion of how loud the audience is. So
that's what I'm saying.
Pay that woman off and win the $100.
Right. I think they must have been last. We never see anyone else after the show, which also when she's like, how long is this going to take? Last, girl, you're going to be there all night. But anyway, they play at Villa Piano's and they play some of the other songs that we'll hear. And something I actually looked at this time, one of my favorite songs from this movie is All My Only Dreams, and it's only featured in this scene, but it is the one that Jimmy wants to re-record for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's the B-side.
And we'll get to it in a couple other places because they place it in a couple other places with Jimmy as almost a representation of Jimmy's feelings about the record company. But I'll bring them up when we get there. It's something I had never quite noticed before and then saw in this one. But it's a slower song, but it's beautiful. If you're a fan of Big Fat Greek Wedding, which was also a Playtone movie, Playtone being Tom Hanks's company, named after the record company in this movie, it is his production company. Playtone made Big Fat Greek Wedding, and so All My Only Dreams plays in the wedding scene of the original Big Fat Greek Wedding in the first one.
Nice.
Yeah, but they then play That Thing You Do to Let Kids Get Up and Dance. Everybody loves them. The owner of the restaurant gives them presidential flashcards, aka a bonus, so that they'll come back and keep playing. So now they have like a regular gig, but Tina's already not coming. And again, blessing in disguise, because your significant other should be a respite sometimes from the work of performing.
She's with the dentist. We never see her.
Well, she hasn't gone to the dentist yet.
Okay, but she's gone.
She has already decided I should not date someone in a band. But they do have other fans, including the one girl in the gray polka dot dress. Where was I? Oh, right, playing songs on my guitar.
I love Steve Zahn's delivery of that line because
yes.
And then he meets her later. I don't think it's a gray polka dot. I think it's like
he meets her at the next.
That's right.
It's gray polka dot, and then at the next gig, she's wearing like an orange dress, and he meets her there.
I love what happens in that scene too, but we'll get there. It's so funny,
so good.
We'll cover it later. Yeah.
But this is where the guy's like, "Hey, where can I buy this record?" And they don't have a record yet. And so they're like, we got to record one. And he's like, well, I got an Uncle Bob who records church sermons. Maybe he could do it. And it is played by Chris Isaak, which is pretty fun.
Wicked Games, baby. Let's go.
Wicked Games. Yeah. So they do it in a church. They record the album. So they have an album they can sell for $1 a piece at the show. Great. At that show is where that same fan shows up. Guy is talking to her. Lenny comes up and he's like, hey, Guy, your girlfriend just came in. And he's like, oh, great. Bye. So she ends up with Lenny and he's like, I'm single. And she's like, what about the bass player?
And he goes, married. He's married.
Married. He's married.
So this whole movie is just Steve Zahn trying to find love. And he gets married, but I don't think he does. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think he finds it.
Well, I feel like his character is one of those guys that falls in love every 10 minutes.
With himself, maybe. Yeah, I mean.
And he does end up married occasionally.
Yeah.
But it doesn't last long.
No,
and that's why he's single at the end of this movie.
Right.
Notice how the days are shorter, but your to-do lists aren't? Power through your busy days with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. From breakfast to dinner and anything in between, Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best. Whether you like routine or you enjoy mixing things up. I know I do. Factor has you covered with 35 different delicious meals every week and over 60 additional convenience options that you can add to your box, like keto cookies, pressed juices, and smoothies. Pro tip, those smoothies are amazing. Perfect for breakfast. Don't let shorter days slow you down. Stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Factor lets you do you. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize your protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. And check this out. I'm a busy lady, constantly on the go, recording a million podcasts. And after it, I'm tired. I don't want to have to cook. So it's good to know that I have a delicious, ready-to-eat Factor meal as close as my fridge. And Jake loves them too. So head to factormeals.com/romancingthepod50 and use code romancingthepod50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code romancingthepod50 at factormeals.com/romancingthepod50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Anyway, the guy who will become their manager in a nice camper buys one of the albums.
That's Horace.
Yeah, Horace.
Phil Horace.
We cut to the next day at the appliance store, and this is literally just a little slice of life to get an idea of kind of who his dad is, where his dad is like, I don't think I want to live in a country where you have to be open on Sunday to do business.
Well, he's complaining about like the big box appliance store down the street or whatever. That's like, it's like the Walmart that's moving in and putting him out of business. So he's like, that's all he's thinking about, you know?
Yes. But while that's happening, Guy is putting out a display of albums at the front of the store. And who should knock on the door but Horace? And he comes out and he's like, I heard your band at Villa Pianos. I want to talk to you. This is a hit record, and he's already got a copy of it.
Yeah, he bought it the night before. I mean, that's how he knows.
Yeah.
Or he has a potential hit on his hands because he walks up to Liv Tyler at the show, and she's like counting a shitload of money. He's like, you sold a lot of these?
Yeah.
And he's like, and she was like, yeah. So he like buys one, listens to it, and then it like comes back and is like, we got to sign these guys.
Yeah. So he gets them all into the camper. He's making them soup. None of them really want to eat it. It does look gross.
Paige, it's actually stew, and that's like a plot point.
He says stew, but it is lentil soup in the pot.
I believe you. I'm just saying what the script said.
Yeah, the script does say stew. He says it's kind of like a stew, but then as you watch him plop it in, I'm like, that's not stew. But fine.
It's kind of like a stew, which this is nothing like. But please eat it. Enjoy my camper. My camper, me camper, you camper.
Camper a Sue camper. Yes. But this is where probably my favorite Steve Zahn line of like, a guy in a nice camper wants to put our song on the radio. I'm signing. You're signing. We're all signing.
We're all signing. It's that one and the pig at the state fair.
Yeah, I got a piggy competition down at the livestock pavilion, and I'm going to win that blue ribbon.
So funny.
Anyway, he basically says to them, Horace does, if I don't get your song on the radio in 10 days, our contract is over and we don't have to worry about this, but let me try and do this. And if I can, then we have a relationship. And they're like, all right. Now, Jimmy is apprehensive because he's a very precious artist about his very precious work.
Yes. I have trouble signing anything that has to do with my art page.
Now, here's what I will tell you. As someone who has had to sign many things related to their art, sometimes you should be apprehensive. You should critically look at the things you sign to make sure that you're not getting screwed. In fact, if you have a lawyer, employ them to look at things you sign to make sure you're not getting screwed. However, you can't refuse to sign everything because you got to sign things for things to get popular. So sometimes you got to sign stuff. You just got to make sure that you're not getting screwed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There you go.
There was a band that was coming up at the same time we were, and they were way better than us. And they honestly could have been signed to a major label and been very famous around 2012 or 2013, but they just didn't want that. Like they had songs on TV. They had a Home Depot commercial.
Oh, wow.
And so because they never signed with a label, they made shitloads of money off of those things and didn't ever become very famous, but they're still making music here in town. They're no longer the Kicks, which, guys, check out the Kicks on Spotify.
I think I remember the Kicks, yeah.
But they're so good. But anyway, they were sort of friends of mine at the time. I mean, friends in so much as that we played a lot of shows with them, and like I had a lot of respect for them, and they, we hung out backstage a lot. They're good people.
Well, and I feel the same way about, there are a number of comics who have built their own platform and have their own thing and make a lot of money off it. Good for them, and have chosen not to sign for mainstream stuff. And there are some times you will get offered mainstream stuff that you should not take. And that's a reality
100%.
of the business. And part of it is just knowing what you should and should not take. I turned down a couple things recently because I was like, that's not my brand. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think this will further the things that I want to do. I think it might get in the way. Those are kind of debates you have to have. But there are also people who are just like, I'm not signing anything. I'm a pure artist. And it was like, so you hate money. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. But like, I will need to pay rent sometimes. So like, but that's who Jimmy is. Jimmy's very precious about his stuff, and he distrusts the label from the beginning. Cut to the dentist, where Tina is at the dentist, and spoiler, that's like the hottest dentist I've ever seen.
He walks out like Clark Kent.
Oh.
And he's like, Tina, and you see her face, like her brain fully reboots in this scene before she's like, oh yeah, no, that's me. I'm Tina. Sorry. You're just like so fuckable, dentist. Like it's so, Charlize Theron is like a nobody in this movie in so much as like she has no screen time and she's so good in it.
I mean, if I were in her shoes, I would have had the same reaction.
Yeah.
Exact same.
You're 23 and a 26-year-old new dentist who's like hot on the scene, built like Clark Kent, wants to just like get up in you. Like, yeah, for sure. It's 1964. All you want to do is get married and have kids and live at home. Jackpot.
This jackpot.
Yeah.
I, as a child watching this movie, I was like, ew, a dentist. And as an adult, I'm like, a dentist though? Like,
shit, a stable job? Shit. Come on.
Not in the arts? Great. Anyway, she's at the dentist. Thus, then we cut to one of the best scenes in this movie of Faye is out dropping off letters.
Yeah.
The bass player is at the Army surplus store.
Well, and Horace literally just said in the camper van when Steve Zahn was like, we're all signing. He was like, if I don't get your song on the radio in 7 days, maybe 10 days tops, we'll just tear up this contract and we'll walk away from it. Right.
Right.
And so it's like the next scene. He does it so fast for them.
So fast because it is catchy. Like this song is so catchy. It made the radio in the 90s. Like that's how catchy it was.
Yeah, it was great. It's a great song.
And guys at the appliance store, Lenny and Jimmy are off somewhere else.
They're driving around. I think they were just driving. Yeah. Okay, so I have a story about this.
You think they're waiting to hear it on the radio?
I think they are.
I think so too. I think that's why everyone has their headphones in.
Yes. So like I have a very similar story to this for when my song was, or when our band was first on the radio.
Yeah.
But we were like we were in a parking lot and had our cars turned up.
Nice.
It was a really cool moment. So like this scene makes me cry every time I see it.
Oh yeah.
Like I cried both times watching it today. I felt bad for everyone in the airport terminal who was like, why is that middle-aged man crying, like weeping softly by the airplane he's about to get on?
It is emotionally effective. If you are someone who creates a thing and then are waiting for the validation that the thing you created is good,
Yes.
it's a very affecting scene.
Yes.
Because it is literally, they make it on the radio, which to them at the time is like, they could have never even imagined being on the radio. And we know, because we're watching the movie and have watched the movie, and we know that this is only the end of Act 1, we know that they will go on to heights that they could not have imagined
course.
at all.
Yeah.
But it's like this idea of this thing they never thought would be happening.
Yeah.
And the joy of that moment, they all rush to the appliance store. They're all dancing in circles. Steve Zahn is making out with that cardboard standee. Classic.
Man, there's so many moments that Steve Zahn just heightens in this movie, and this is one of them. But it's just it's so touching.
He like high fives her tit.
Yeah. This moment is so touching because it's exactly what you said. It's like social validation of the thing that you do being good, at least, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So they heard their song on the radio. Oh my God, it's incredible. We cut to Guy talking to his girlfriend who had been at the dentist all day. And he's like, it played 3 times and she's setting her hair with a Flowbee. And
she hadn't been at the dentist all day. She went in for like a new dentist appointment.
Yes.
And she's like doing her hair. I think, and Paige, maybe this is just because
you think he messed her hair up?
No. This is the 60s, Paige. He definitely messed her hair up. No, I'm just
That's
joking.
what I'm saying.
I think that he just asked her out for the next night.
Yes.
And that's why she's doing her hair.
Yes.
And this is just her way of breaking up with him. Because when he is talking about the show and he's like, you should come. And she's like, oh, I actually have to
be at the dentist
go in for a
all day.
15-hour dental surgery. And he's like, well, you're going to miss the 2,000 screaming fans. And she's like, okay, cool.
Oh,
and he
okay.
says, I am Spartacus. And she just hangs up the phone awkwardly.
Because she's already turned the hairdryer on,
I know.
so she doesn't even hear it. She just hangs up.
She's like, I've checked out. I said the word dentist. He gets it.
That is the last scene of her in this film.
Yeah.
Just period. We never see or hear from her again. But we cut to that show in Pittsburgh and it goes bad because we've all had this where AV problems, the sound cuts out or you're just not playing at your best that day and sometimes it just don't fucking work. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Playtone was there to see it.
Yeah.
And they didn't know that at the time.
They did not. I've had a show like this, although Mr. Playtone, quote unquote, was not there.
Sure.
But I forgot my rug that you would set up the drum on, or my drums on. And if you don't bring your rug and the venue doesn't have one, you're going to be sliding around the entire show.
Yeah.
Because drums, especially if you play them the way I play them, they move when you hit them.
Yes.
So I eventually, because my bass drum kept getting so far out in front of me, my bass player would have to come and push it back in between songs. We eventually just had a fan come up and sit on my drum set. So it on my bass drum. And so you just couldn't really see me, but the bass drum finally wasn't moving away from me. It was one of the worst shows. This is worse than when I almost fell out of a 3-story window.
Right.
When I fell off that stage against the window. Oh man, I've had bad shows, man. Everyone goes through this. It's terrible.
Everyone does. And I feel like it's one of those things that the longer you have shows, the more you prepare for those eventualities so they happen less and less. But that takes time and experience and doing it a lot. And in this movie, they're still new. I mean, this movie spans only about 3 months. And so you have to remember that they're barely a band. They've only been a band for a couple weeks at this point.
I mean, literally.
So, yeah. Anyway, Tom Hanks, of course, plays Mr. White, the Playtone record exec manager person that's going to add them.
Yeah, Horace brings him out of the venue and he's like, hey man, I know you had a bad show, but you'll be fine. It was a matinee. You'll fix it tonight. Let me treat you to a taste of the Far East. And then he goes into this, I think it's a Chinese food restaurant, right?
Chinese restaurant,
and
yes.
That's where you first see Tom Hanks in this movie. And you're like, oh, Tom Hanks is here.
Well, and I love because he's like, I got to talk to the rest of the band. And he's like, okay, we'll go talk to the rest of the band.
Well, that's when he offers him a record deal. We want to buy up Horace's contract, more or less, of you guys. And we'll put you into the nationals. We'll put you into the national distribution.
Right. But I do love that the very next scene, he comes in between their shows. They have another show that night.
Yes.
And before that show, he comes in, he's like, here's all the shit we're changing. No more Oneaters. It is just the Wonders.
You're the Wonders. Yeah. Because that makes sense.
Yes. We're the Wonders. If you like Faye, she's your costume mistress. You're going to wear nice suits for nice boys, except for maybe you, because they just pick a persona for Guy, which I kind of love. And he's like, we're going to tour, and then eventually we'll put out a new album. And at this point, Jimmy says, well, I'd really like to get another cut of All My Only Dreams. We only got one take of that. And he's like, no, it sounds fine. We're going to just keep it. And he's not happy, but fine. But this is also where we find out that the bass player joined the Marine Corps and will be leaving at the end of August, but he'll stay with the band till then, which I think is a classic thing that you will encounter is people who are good at things but had no plans or desire to be famous doing them and therefore planned regular life instead.
Yeah.
Smart.
I mean, like, that's the way it works. I do think that some people are like driven to do a thing.
Sure.
And some people just get pulled into that sometimes.
Yep.
And eventually they leave it because it's not the thing they want to do with their life.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying, Paige?
I do. Yeah. It happens.
Unfortunately, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like that Tom Hanks throws the not Ray-Bans, but more or less the Ray-Bans at him.
The Foster Grants.
Yeah, and he's like, see how the world looks through these. I was like, I love this. This
Great
is
line.
so great.
Well, Andy's like, I'm going to go have a chat with the guy and make sure your mics and shit work.
We didn't talk about this.
He's going to rip that guy's asshole out.
He does. I'm sure he does. But this is the guy who he's talking about we have seen, right?
Yes.
And he is like the mattress king or
He's the
whatever.
mattress king of all three counties or whatever it is.
And
Yeah.
but it's Kevin Pollak playing
Right.
Boss Vic Koss.
Right.
And for no reason, like this movie has this like one scene with this like exuberant mattress salesman who also hosts a local radio show.
Yes.
Or a local rock and roll like live show. And he has like a call and response with the people that come to the show. I was like, this makes it feel like they are playing a show that is like so established that like the community in this city like know this venue and this type of show so well.
Yes.
I was like, that's like a level of detail you don't typically get.
Yes.
It's not like it's a throwaway thing because it's good and it's funny, but it doesn't come back.
No.
You know, it's just a level of depth you don't always get. And I loved it.
Well, and I think it's a historical touch point too, where I think that used to happen a lot more often. It still kind of does because I've been to not one, but two Honda Civic tours. So like.
Oh, I mean, but that's the way TV used to work. It used to be like the
Yes.
Colgate Comedy Hour or something.
Exactly.
The TV show at the end
From
of
the
this.
Colgate Comedy Hour.
The TV show at the end of this movie that they play on when we get like the what
Yes.
they're doing now or whatever.
Yep.
Like that's sponsored by, and I think the darkest joke in the movie, Monsanto.
Yes, it is sponsored
I was
by
like,
Monsanto.
oh my God, oh my God.
Monsanto used to sponsor a lot of stuff.
I know.
It's one of the few real things in this movie.
Yeah.
But we never see that last show because they are immediately on tour for state fairs.
Yeah.
And we start to meet the other stable of talent in the Playtone galaxy, the Chantrellines, who are basically their Supremes stand-in, where the bass player will fall for one of the Chantrellines. We have Diane Dane, who is basically like a Dusty Springfield, who is kind of past her prime, but still trying to recapture that fame. And then we have Freddie Fredrickson, who has like a TV theme that got famous and has been coasting on it for years. But honestly, I have the soundtrack. The theme fucking slaps for Mr. Downtown.
It does. I listened to the soundtrack today. So like I watched like the first half of this movie before I boarded the plane.
Yes.
And then I listened to the soundtrack while I was boarding and like waiting to get in the air and then waiting to get on the Wi-Fi. And then when I got on the Wi-Fi, I finished it. So I listened to most of the soundtrack today.
Yes.
It's great.
It's amazing.
And this song is very like, it's very croonery.
A haunting, taunting sound.
It's so
yes,
good.
It's
Yeah,
good.
it's like-
it's really fun.
It's very like Rat Pack. I loved it.
Yes. But they're also playing for local DJs will like show up, and if they like it, they'll play it on their radio show.
Yeah.
And that will then get them onto the Billboard charts. So they have matching suits, they have glasses, they get off stage. I do love that the instructions they have are like, you unplug and you run off stage, smiling,
Guys.
run off stage, no encores.
Guys, that's not a joke. A lot of times at shows, especially like they did back in the day, where you would see 12 performers a night, right?
Right,
Like
right.
there's no changeover. Like you're playing or you're bringing your guitar up and plugging into the amp that's on stage. Your drummer's running
Right.
up with the sticks in their hand and playing their set on the drum set that's set up for every band. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like, it's
right.
not like you're changing out equipment after every band. It's like there's maybe 2 or 3 minutes between the changeover in songs.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it's like, you have to get off stage immediately.
Yes.
And if you don't, you're getting run over by the person who needs to plug into the amp or sit down on the drum throne that you're on.
Yeah, one of my first agent, I remember one of the things that she would always drill into us is like, say your name before you get off the stage.
Yep.
Like, I'm so-and-so, because they don't remember who you are because it's been 10 minutes. I'm so-and-so, and then you do not run the light. You shake hands, but you don't actually shake hands because that would take longer. You basically like secret high five the host as you get off the stage and get the fuck off the stage. Like, yeah. Anyway, they do it later, and they like specifically show it, and it's very, very funny.
Yeah.
But they go on, they have a good set. It does play the next day. They do end up on the Billboard the Billboard Top 100 chart at 21, and we get a montage of them playing a number of different venues at the state fairs. We see that Chad has taken Guy's position in the appliance store.
Yeah.
And in theory, probably marries Guy's sister, I would assume, in a
don't know.
storyline that is not fully fleshed out in the movie.
That's why I said I don't know, because they don't fully flesh it out, right? But it does seem like he becomes the son that Guy's dad wanted, right? So
yes,
like, he marries the Guy's sister and then does run the store, and Guy gets to have his own life, you know?
Yeah, all we know is that we see him take the job at the store, and then later when the whole family is watching, he's there with the sister.
Yes,
so
that's why I thought that too, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we do cut to, I know it's Illinois, the land of Lincoln, but this is where he's got a pig in competition at the livestock pavilion, and I'm going to win that blue ribbon. And we get a full performance of Dance With Me Tonight, which is a song we have not heard until now.
Oh man, that one right there is my second favorite song on the soundtrack.
Sure.
And it slaps, man. It's so good. I do also love, and I don't know if it's like exactly where it happens, because it happens quite a few times in this section of the movie when they're like on tour, and it's like them as fans of like music, the thing that they do, meeting the people who are successful doing it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so they're like meeting the guy who had the TV theme song that was a hit.
Right.
They're
right.
meeting Diane Dane. They're meeting the
Diane
Supremes,
Dane,
right?
You're
And
very
so, like,
important to me.
but they're meeting them not as fans. They're meeting as like peers. Now they're not like on the same level. They're like newly starting out, but like in the same line of business. So like your conversations are different with those people. And like the crooner who sings the TV theme is like,
he kind of becomes their friend.
Yeah, he's like
by
their
the
friend.
end, he's introducing them.
yeah, I feel like he sort of adopts them on tour in a very kind way. You know, he's like trying to get them incorporated into the Playtone galaxy of stars.
Right.
You know, and I love that because I have had plenty of conversations like that with people who were like way more famous than me. Because like we like played shows with Brett
Michaels.
Yeah, Brett Michaels, Tantric, Striper, like a bunch of bands that were like famous in the 80s and were like on their way down as we were on our way up. And a lot of them were like really cool, nice people.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's like whenever I open for someone more famous than me.
Yeah.
I'm still there working just like you are, but we have different conversations. But this is also where we find out, I mean, we do get to see the Chantrellines perform and the bass player watching them from the wings, because it's implied that he has a little bit of a romance with one of these Chantrellines. We then cut to, they're all at kind of like an after party, and Mr. White is kind of noticing that Jimmy has gravitated toward Diane Dane, who is kind of their Dusty Springfield stand-in. And he's like, yeah, she's not going to be happy to see that the record's climbing the charts. She is kind of very jealous. But he is kind of asking Faye about Jimmy and asking Guy about Faye. And I think he's kind of trying to suss out where the allegiances lie, because in talking to Faye, he finds out that Guy had a girlfriend but doesn't anymore. So he's kind of a free agent. Yeah. As are Lenny and the not so much the bass player, because he's got the Chantrellines.
He's also going into the military. Like, I mean, sure, have a girlfriend, but like you're going to be gone soon. So it's like, yeah.
He's going to be gone. Yeah. And Jimmy has Faye, but does not seem to understand, respect, or care for Faye.
Jimmy is enamored by Diane Dane.
Well, I think what Mr. White is noticing in this scene, and I think in watching it as a grown-up, I see it a little bit more than I probably did in earlier viewings of this movie, is that he is noticing that Jimmy is ready and wants to be a performing artist of this caliber, and Faye will hold him back unless he gets rid of her, and he's gonna get rid of her. I think Mr. White knows Faye is toast at this point.
You don't think Jimmy could have been famous with Faye behind him?
I think he never would have.
Why?
I think he has the ego that would make him think that he was more important than her forever.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant that Faye was holding him back on some level.
No. I think
no. Yeah.
I think he would perceive that he would think she was. That is not true.
I definitely think he thinks he's too good for her once he is on this level. Yes. He is not.
Yeah.
But he thinks he is. Yes.
Right. Yes. And I think that's what Mr. White is seeing, is that Jimmy already thinks he's too good for this shit. She's really great and supportive, but she's toast. She ain't gonna be around.
I think Tom Hanks, I was gonna call him Mr. White, but I think Tom Hanks sees how special Faye is.
Yes.
And
because he does say to Guy, Faye's special, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and because and I think Faye's like of Guy, and Mr. White I think also knows correctly that Guy loves Faye as well. That's why Mr. White calls Guy the smart one. He's like, you're the smart one because you knew how special Faye was this whole time.
Right.
Because even though Faye is dating Jimmy the second,
Jimmy starts ignoring her from this point forward, and Guy takes care of her on tour.
He is like making sure she's comfortable on the road because she is the costume mistress and is still on the road with them, even though Jimmy's sort of like, they are still dating, but he feels done with her or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And literally after they do one more show, and it is the unplug and run, where they literally like unplug and sprint. And it's very funny.
I love that you get to see that too.
Yes.
They ran off the stage faster than Trey Cool in their first Saturday Night Live performance.
Which is hard to do.
If you've seen
hard to do.
They play like When I Come Around or some shit.
Yes,
and then
classic.
He runs off stage. Like he just like drops his sticks and runs off stage. It is the most insane thing I've ever seen. Trey Cool is nuts.
Very nice guy.
He's such a good drummer. Like he's so good.
Anyway, they run off stage. They find out that they are number one, which means they are getting off the tour and they're flying to Los Angeles to do promo and cut another record.
Yeah.
So they get on the plane and Faye is not feeling well. So Guy actually like gets her settled on the plane, gets her, a blanket, gets her laying down. It's a very sweet moment between the two of them.
It was very sweet. I saw this part of the movie on a plane, and I was very jealous because that plane must have been huge because there's like two seats. He gets her to move over and lay down, and he's like kneeling in the aisle.
Yes.
To like make sure the pillow's there for her head as it falls. And a steward or stewardess, I can't remember which
walks
around him. I was like, there's no plane that has an aisle that big anymore. Like, that's crazy.
Back in the day, they used to. Yeah, back in the day, they used to. I thought you were going to say the plane was huge because she could curl up in one row. And I was like, oh, no, I do this all the time.
If you're a certain height, you could totally do this.
Yeah.
I've slept on an international flight. I've slept on two seats.
Yeah. Oh, a hundo.
But, like, the fact that he was kneeling in the aisle and someone could just, like, walk around him, I was like, oh, that's never going to happen anymore.
Well, and it was a plane that still had a dining area.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
With a table.
Yeah.
But they're like meeting with Hair Playtone, and so they like go and sit with Mr. White, and Mr. White basically lays out their schedule for a week, and Jimmy's like, but we're gonna get to record music. He's like, yes, after we do all these promotional things, we get to record music, which is, if you have to work with someone who is an artist like Jimmy, who is very committed to the art and not the marketing, it is very frustrating to work with that sometimes, because you're like, look, we gotta do the marketing part so that they give us the money to do the art part, and I know you hate it, I hate it too, but like we just gotta do it.
What Jimmy doesn't understand is that a lot less people care about your art if they're not going to be able to make any money with you off of it.
Yep.
And that's why you've got to do the marketing stuff. You got to get the people to see it. You got to make the sales.
And you got to be nice and smile.
Yeah.
And be like, yes, I'm here. I've showed up on time and I am ready to participate and play. Yes.
Yeah.
But they find out that they're going to be in a motion picture, but they are also going to visit Playtone and meet like the head of Playtone, and there's a whole bunch of stuff they're going to do. They are staying at the Ambassador Hotel, which is one of the ones they talked about in True Romance.
It's one of the famous LA hotels, right?
Yeah, it's in Beverly Hills. Yeah.
I love the doorman at this hotel. He becomes like a character for the rest of the movie.
Babatunde.
Yeah, he's so good. But I love him in this. This may be the first time I've seen him, but he's so good. In the final kiss of the movie, they give him 2 reaction shots to it.
Yeah, of course.
And they're both great. I love
They're both great. Interesting note about the hotel, and we'll cover this a little bit more in fun facts. They say it's the Beverly Ambassador, and we do shoot that from the exterior. The interior coffee shop where we see them in a couple moments, a couple times, is the Beverly Hills Hotel. Different hotel.
Weird.
Down the street a little bit, but it has very, very distinctive wallpaper, and that's how you can tell it's one hotel or the other. The banana leaf wallpaper is unique to the Beverly Hills. They have made replicas of it so people can buy it and put it in their house now, but it was unique to that hotel and is still on the walls of that hotel.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Burned fun fact. Anyway, they get to the hotel. And they are all recording a major motion picture. So Faye is buying cough syrup and stuff for herself. And Lamar, Abba Babatunde's character, comes over and is like, you shouldn't be alone. You're sick. And she's just like, yeah, and I don't have any cash. I'm so sorry. And he's like, charge it to the room and I'll send some soup up too.
Yeah.
Didn't you check in with that band? Why aren't they taking care of you? And she's like, they're off recording a movie. And it's a Rick and Anita movie, which is basically like a Gidget movie, like a beach movie.
Yeah.
And they are playing Cap and Geech and the Shrimp Shack Shooters.
I love when Steve Zahn later in like a DJ interview name drops them as his favorite band. I was like, I love it.
So do you know, so there's 2 DJ interviews. They're coming up. Actually, they're in this next scene.
Yes.
So they do one, and the interviewer, the DJ, is Paul Feig of Paul Feig fame, who like wrote and directed Bridesmaids and stuff.
Oh,
or I
that's
guess
awesome.
mainly directed Bridesmaids, because I guess Kristen Wiig mostly wrote it.
I didn't
but-
realize that was Paul Feig. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's Paul Feig.
Before we leave the beach movie scene, we should say
Yes.
Jimmy is like,
He's not having
he
it.
feels above it. He's like, I'm above this.
Yeah.
I'm too good for this. We have a hit song. This is beneath us.
Which it's always tough when you have to do a thing that feels shitty and basic and cringe to get to do a cooler thing.
Yeah.
Because that happens all the time. But it's way less shitty when you have people who are all like, we're going to do our thing, right? Like I recently had to shoot a thing that the 3 of us doing it didn't want to do it. But all of us at the end of the day were like, fuck it, we're going to have fun while we're here. And we'll do it, and then we'll do the cooler thing after. And it made it so much easier because we were all like, we know this is shitty, but we're in it together.
Yeah.
But when you've got the one person that just can't let go of it, that's so frustrating.
It is. But that's why that band was never going to make it.
No, never. Jimmy's going to make it.
Yeah, Jimmy's going to make it, but Jimmy's going to always have someone who is like...
Well, and Jimmy's going to have a reputation for being difficult to work
Yes.
with, which means he will make it, but there will be limits.
Yeah, I was going to say he's going to have a handler. He's going to have someone who like produces him.
Yes, has to. Anyway, so yes, Jimmy's not having it. They do the interview with Paul Feig, but they do another one with Clint Howard.
Oh, the one that's like basically a podcast?
Yeah.
So the first
Yeah.
one, is that Paul Feig? Is that Feig?
The first one's Paul Feig.
Yeah, so he is like, when people make fun of my voice, I feel like they think I sound like that DJ from LA. I'm like, that is, I think, what people think I sound like, and I want you to go listen to that guy and then say that I sound like that guy.
I mean, you probably don't want to hear this, but I will, there's a caveat to it. You don't not sound like that guy.
I know.
However,
I know there's a correlation. I know.
there's a correlation.
Yeah.
Part of that is not a defect so much as enunciation for audio mediums.
Yeah.
Like they used to train people to talk like that. Specifically because you could then hear and understand them. So while we make fun of you for it and you do kind of sound like that guy, there's a reason.
That's just like the way I talk, though, which is funny.
Well, that's also
because,
the way Paul Feig talks, too. He also sounds like that.
Yeah, if you came to see me in Jacksonville where I was this past weekend and we just like had a conversation, you would see that I sound like this all the time.
I sound like this most of the time too. I had a conversation with my dad where he was like, somebody told me that we have an accent in Northern California. And I was like, we do.
You do.
It's maybe not as distinct as others, but it is there. And he was like, interesting. But we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every place has an accent.
Every place got a little bit of an accent.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we don't have a hella accent, but we got some. Anyway, so they go from those interviews to meet the head of Playtone Records, who does not give a shit about them because that's below his pay grade.
It super is.
100%.
Yes. Although, you know what sucks about that is it is super below his pay grade.
Yeah.
He is there to like take a photo with them and then go about the business of just really using other people's talent and through nothing other than just having more money than them, exploiting it for his own continual gain.
Yeah.
Or as I like to call it, business.
Yes. I mean, look, hey, do I have mean things to say about Netflix sometimes? Yes. Did I shake hands and smile at the Netflix execs when I went to go do their festival? Also, yes.
Of course.
I'm a business lady.
Yes.
I do business things.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, it's business. That's like a world you have to sort of deal with.
Yeah. And then you steal their pillows for fun.
Yeah, and also, you know who's not going to give you a shitload of money to produce your next album if you're not like gonna do the dance, the marketing dance? Anybody. Nobody's gonna do that.
Yeah. In this case, he's like, Jimmy is like, I want to meet with you to talk about songs. And I do like that Mr. White is like, what is happening? I should stop this from happening. Because the head of Playtone is just like, why the fuck would I meet with you about that?
Yeah.
You don't think I'm busy? You don't think I have a bunch of other things to do? Which admittedly, like in some cases, those people bumble their way into those jobs and don't do anything. But at this time, that guy was probably brokering business deals with the mob to fund records. So he probably was busy.
I mean, but that's not his job. Like, he should be talking to the producers that work at that label, you know? Like, that's... if you're talking to the owner of the label about, like, songs you're writing, like, that's not what that person's even gonna be good at, you know? Like, they're running a business.
No, I know, yeah.
So, like...
Yeah. Jimmy is misunderstanding in that moment where this person is. Yes.
Jimmy is dumb, but he can write good songs. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. That's why he needs a handler.
Yes.
That's why he needs someone to be like, Jimmy's stupid. Don't mind him.
He needs a producer. Like one of my favorite bands that like came up maybe a little bit after our time is Foxy Shazam. I love Foxy Shazam. If you hear any of the albums that the guy from The Darkness produced, they're amazing. Outside of that, like the self-produced stuff, not my jam, you know? Some people can be amazing artists with the right producers and just not, for me, be a hit outside of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like this is even a case of there are some people that are brilliantly funny but undisciplined.
It's called having ADHD, Paige.
Tell me about it. But it's amazing when you see someone step in and be like, we're going to do things this way, this format, this whatever. And then you watch that person shine even brighter than before because you suddenly focused that energy. That's what Jimmy needs.
Yeah. I honestly think that's what Mr. White does for him with the Herdsman.
Yes.
Because he does go on to become an artist, like a star.
And I'm sure because they knew about him from this, they were like, assign someone to him to soothe his ego and feed him snacks.
Oh, it's Mr. White becomes the president. Like, he becomes the president
That's
of
true.
Playtone.
He does become the president of Playtone.
He might not be the producer, but he's the one that signs Jimmy. Like, he knows Jimmy's a star.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
He just prefers Guy.
And he even says that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he prefers Guy as a person, but knows Jimmy will be successful.
I have a guy like Mr. White in my life. We're still friends. Mm-hmm. And I think he was a lawyer at Sony, and he was one of the reasons we got looked at by them, and one of the reasons we got passed on by them was because we probably shouldn't. We weren't great. We weren't the best band in the world, but we're still friends, you know?
Yeah.
And he helped me get, like, after the band broke up, he helped me get studio session work, like, in town. Like, he was just like, you're the smart one in the band. I mean, he didn't call me that. He would call me the good one.
There you go.
But he loved us all. He just, like, he was the best. Or is the best. But when we would when we would play shows here in town, he would come and we would like let him in during sound check. And because he is like sort of a known figure in town, and right now he's like the head legal counsel at Big Loud Records.
Right.
But he's like a known figure in town. And I had a cowbell on my drum set because it was featured in one of our songs.
Sure.
And he would tease sound guys saying that he was our cowbell sound check technician. And he would have me just wail on the cowbell as he walked around slowly. So it was just like me hammering a cowbell for 2 minutes. And my friend Jeff just like really pissing off the sound guy, but they couldn't do anything because they know who Jeff is. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So they couldn't be a dick.
It's so funny. I love Jeff, man. He's so good.
Anyway, we cut to them in the coffee shop of the Beverly Hills Hotel because of the wallpaper. And this is where Jimmy's like, oh, like the label's being fucking awful. They're treating us bad. And Lenny is like, oh yeah, they put us up at a 5-star hotel and we got to be in a movie and be on a budget. Yeah, sure. They're being dicks to us, you asshole. And he's like, well, fine. I guess I'm alone in my principles. Off to write that hit song, Alone in My Principles. Diane Dane warned me about this. Never trust the label. At this point, Faye is kind of apologizing for him. She's like, he's a genius, so his standards are real high, and then leaves to try and go soothe him, I guess. But Guy is like, if he's a genius, like that, he's not. He's just being a dick, right?
Yeah, if he's a genius, I'm Utante.
Yes.
Which I had to look up because I wasn't alive in the 60s. And he was the Secretary General of the UN at the time.
Yes.
Which I think is probably a dig on the Secretary General of the UN at the time because they say it like he's not very smart. But I don't get that reference because I'm not my parents.
No, I think the implication is he is very smart because if Jimmy's a genius, I'm that much smarter than him.
Oh, I thought he was saying about Jimmy. My bad. Yeah. Okay. So they are saying he's smart then. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was the other way around. Okay.
Right. But as so Lenny's date shows up, they're going to go do whatever, go on a date with him and the receptionist that he met at Playtone.
Oh, you mean his future wife, Paige?
Future wife.
That has to be a Buddy Holly reference, right?
Maybe.
Like isn't that how Buddy Holly met his wife? I mean, I realize they weren't married very long, but like
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was one of the secretaries at his label. I might be wrong about that, and I'm not going to look it up because I don't have time. But
I also feel like that's something that would have happened a bunch to a lot of people.
Oh, yes, that happens to a lot of people now. They just meet someone at work and they fall in love and they get married.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that leaves Guy and the bass player. And the bass player spots a bunch of Marines. He's like, I'm about to be a Marine soon. And they're like, yeah, prove it. Do push-ups. And Guy is like, cool. So I'm on my own today.
Yeah. But then the bass player, TB player, goes AWOL for the band.
He goes AWOL.
And just goes to Disney with the Marines.
Love it. Like 1960s Disneyland. That was a flex. It was brand new at the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, Guy goes out and he asks Lamar, like, where should I go to get good jazz? And he's like, let me ask you this. Who played cornet on this one specific album? He's like, Scotty McDonald. He's like, get in the case. You want good jazz. Okay, go to the blue spot.
I love it. He's like, get in the taxi. Get in the taxi. Like, you could just tell not only did he get it right, Lamar is so impressed that he got it right. He's going to tell him the good club to go to, you know?
Anyway, we get a scene, and again, on the screenwriting circle, this is the meeting of the goddess.
Yeah,
where,
because he meets Del Paxton, the trumpet player or whatever.
Yes, he goes to the jazz club, the blue spot, and he's watching jazz, loving it, but he does meet, first of all, Marguerite, the waitress, who then introduces him to Del Paxton.
I love when she hands him off to Del Paxton because it's clear she's working him, man. She is like into it.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like flirting with him and he's like not super into it. He was asking like, hey, is the trio coming back on? Because I'm probably going to bounce if they're not.
Yep.
And that's when she goes over and takes him and introduces him. And then she's like, oh, I've lost you. Well, I'm going to go.
Yeah. Yep. And that is Tom Hanks's wife, Rita.
Yeah.
But yes. Yeah. But he then gets home, gets to the hotel somehow unseen. But we know that he oversleeps for his TV appearance the next day.
Yeah.
So he makes his way to the studio. The bass player is gone.
Yeah, he's at Disney. That's where we get the flash of him at Disney with the Marines.
Him at Disneyland.
Yeah.
We see that Jimmy is throwing up at the bathroom. Now, Jimmy says that Faye got him sick. I think it's nerves. I think Jimmy is nervous.
I think it's nerves too. I mean, this is their first TV performance, right? Like I would be so nervous. Yeah.
Oh, if I had a nickel for every time I'd seen a comic barf because of nerves at a taping, I'd be a rich lady. It's super common.
Oh yeah. I mean, as we grew and like we would play bigger and bigger shows. We would always say, hey guys, it's just like Capilano's because that was the restaurant that we played our second show at. and nobody came to more or less. We played to like 12 people maybe.
Yeah.
And it was like a nothing show that we had, and it was like a great show. We had a blast playing it. And it was just like, it's always those stakes. And if you go out thinking that like, let's just go out, have a fun time, have a good show, a lot of times those shows are great because you're not putting that pressure on yourself.
Yes, but sometimes there are inescapable stakes.
Oh, yeah.
And this is one of those moments.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
I had a thing that I had to get to, and it was, at the time, one of the biggest things I'd ever done, because it was for NACA, the National Association of Campus Activities.
That's who you like, you got to get in good with those people because then you can tour college campuses and actually like make a career out of it.
Yes, and that's the only way you make money as a comedian at that level who didn't have like TV credits and stuff at the time. And there was like a crazy accident on the freeway, and I hadn't spent the night before, so I was trying to drive in, and I was cutting it. Now, granted, I was still there an hour and some change before the show started, but call time was an hour.
That's so late.
Well, not in comedy, it's not, because we don't sound check.
I know, but we were once almost late the first night we opened for Bret Michaels, and we got there 5 hours before showtime. And we were like so late they almost replaced us.
So that's what was about to happen. So in comedy, usually max is an hour because we don't sound check and we don't have to set anything up.
Right. Somebody sounds checks, but because everyone's doing the same thing with the mic, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Exactly. But so at an hour before showtime, I was literally like 5 miles away. Like I was finally almost there. And my agent, because this is so ubiquitous, told people I was in the bathroom getting sick from nerves so that they didn't replace me.
Yeah. But no, she's here. She's just like sort of nervous. She's thrown up. Meanwhile, cut to you in traffic yelling like, ah!
Oh, yes. 100%.
The reason we were late is because Atlanta traffic is a nightmare and we didn't think about that and we had to meet them in Atlanta. I
had left 4 hours before I had to be there. And it was supposed to only take me 45 minutes. So I should have been there 3 hours early. And it was just because there was a crazy accident and it was a standstill and I had to like get off and take City Street. It was nuts. Anyway. It sucks. But yeah, she told people I was getting sick from nerves, and then everyone was really nice to me after.
Nice.
But that's also a good agent.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, so he's getting sick. Lenny's like, hey, I'm driving to Vegas to get married tonight. He has completely ignored whatever the schedule is after this thing. So he's going to be out after. He is not paying attention at all. And they have now, bass player's AWOL. We know he's at Disneyland. They're replacing him with Wolfman, who is just a really competent studio bass player. And their bass player was nothing special. So he just immediately replaces him.
No, I think the movie shows that the bass player is their friend who could play bass.
Right.
And he doesn't consider himself a bass player.
Right.
He's just there because he can play bass.
Right.
Wolfman is a bass player.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I actually, okay, so now that I actually wrote down a line of dialogue that Wolfman says, and I think it may be a joke about something that we've been pointing out, although I didn't think about it at the time, because Jimmy says something like, do you think you can handle the song or whatever?
Right.
And Wolfman's like one of his only lines in the whole movie is like, oh, I think I can handle it, Junior. And then he plays like this, like literally even the
sick face melting riff. Yes.
Literally even the closed captions say killer bass lick.
Yes.
Like even the captions are like, guys, it slaps. Trust me, it slaps.
It's awesome.
But I just realized that he, even though Jimmy is a second, like is like, I can handle it, Junior.
I
thought it was so, I just realized that. It's so funny. That's so funny. Well done, Wolfman.
That is so hilarious. Oh, the other thing that I know that I'm realizing right now I forgot to bring up about All My Only Dreams is that every time that Jimmy holds an album and we see it from his perspective, he holds it B-side up.
Yeah, because, man, that's an artist thing too.
Because that's the one he cares about.
Yeah. Because artists like, okay, I wrote one for the fans.
This one's for them.
And this is the one I wrote for me. And secretly, they badly want the fans to love the B-side more.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, MGMT. It's just right. You just can't do. You got to write songs that people actually want to listen to. I'm so sorry.
I do this every time with Roast Battle where I write the ones that I know will do well. And then I have at least one that I'm like, this might do well. But mainly it makes me laugh, and that's why I'm going to tell it anyway. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But all the really good roast battlers have at least one in each battle that they're like, this one's for me.
Yeah.
This one's for me to have fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Wolfman's in. The show starts, and I do love that the interview before they play is an interview with an astronaut played by Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
Who is barely in this movie.
I know. No, Breaking Bad's in the movie, guys.
Yeah. They have the black suits. You guys look lovely in the black suits. Love you in the gold. Red is your color. Love you in the suits.
I love that every time he says that, it's a different color suit.
Every time.
It's so great. I love that right before they play, Steve Zahn looks at a guy on the drum set. He's like, how did we get here? And he's like, I led you here, sir.
For I am Spartacus.
Which is kind of true. Like, the song would not have blown up like it was had it stayed a ballad.
Absolutely. Jimmy would never admit that, but it's true.
It is true.
Anyway, they play, and as they're playing on TV, they're cutting back and forth from close-ups on everybody, except for Wolfman, too scary. But when they cut to Jimmy, it says, careful girls, he's engaged.
He's engaged. Congratulations is what it says. Yeah.
Yes. Now, I don't know who told them that. What's your theory? Who do you think told them that?
Okay.
I have 3 different theories, but go ahead.
That's too many theories to have. What are you, the DA?
It's not.
You gotta boil it down to one and have some evidence. I'm gonna say it's Mr. White. I think it's Mr. White. I think he is
That's
producing the
theory.
breakup of this band.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do think Mr. White is the one who tells.
The honorable mention would go to, I think, Guy, but only because he's happy for them.
Okay, so I have a third option.
Okay. Was that your second?
No, Guy is my third because we never see him talk to them. And I think if Guy were to be honest with himself, he would not be happy to find out that they were getting married.
No, but I think he would be supportive. Like, I agree. I think he would be supportive though, because we've seen him be supportive of their relationship. He's not. I don't feel like he's trying to like weasel his way in with her.
No, not of course not.
Every time they have a moment, it is just genuine kindness between them. It's not like he's like, yo, you want to bang it out? Like, he's just like getting her a pillow and stuff because she's sick. Like,
right.
Yeah.
But there is a part of me that's like, him knowing Jimmy, I think at a certain point he would never say anything or do anything about it. I do think that he would not be happy because he thinks she deserves better.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my alternate theory, and it's one that I formulated in my watch of this movie this time. Who do we know is actually getting married after this? Lenny. I think they just got the Chiron wrong.
Who's Lenny?
Because Lenny, Steve Zahn's character, because he is engaged. He's about to drive to Vegas to get married.
Oh, I didn't think he was engaged yet. I thought he got married just because he hit it big at slots or whatever in Vegas. But you might be right. I don't know.
I'd always thought that too. And then in watching this one, in the bathroom, when Jimmy's getting sick, he says, I'm driving to Vegas tonight because I'm in it. I'm going to marry this woman. I love her.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, someone overheard that and thought it was the wrong person.
That 100% could be
too.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I missed that.
But no, I think it's Mr. White.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was Mr. White. But then this time I was like, oh my God, maybe it's just a mistake. Anyway, so he basically, the band comes off stage. Everyone is happy except for Jimmy, who's mad because he's like, well, now they think I'm engaged. And I'm like, if you really loved her, why would that make you upset? You've been together for a long time or whatever.
Over 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is like the 60s. Y'all should be engaged. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at this point, they break up. And she's just kind of like, fuck you.
There are so many good lines in the breakup of this.
Speech.
Yeah.
Woo.
Like, she is. The whole movie, like, and Tom Hanks wrote this movie. We didn't talk about that necessarily.
Wrote
but like,
and directed. It's his directorial debut.
There are so many lines that are like, I think, very iconic. And the one from this breakup specifically was like, shame on me for kissing you with my eyes closed so tight. Like, yeah, really? That's such a good line. I loved it.
Oh, that's an incredible line.
Yeah.
And it's years later, you will remember that line. It's so good.
Yeah, it's like, it is a line that Jimmy is stealing currently and it's going to work into one of his songs.
Yes.
Like, that's how good that line is.
Well, and then he follows it up with, I should have dumped you in Pittsburgh.
Man, I loved when Guy was like, why didn't you dump her in Pittsburgh? Like, please, why? Like,
why did you drag her here to leave her here?
Well, and also, I think the implication is like, man, I'm into her. She's awesome.
Yes.
If you had broken up with her in Pittsburgh, I could have started dating her in fucking Sheboygan.
Right.
Or whatever, you know? Like,
right.
Because, like, sometimes the woman you marry started out dating your close friend.
Yeah.
And they break up with them. And then you're like, oh man, my friend's an idiot and I should definitely marry Natalie. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, we cut to the recording studio the next day.
Yeah.
And Jimmy is throwing a hissy fit. He's like, we record my songs or nothing. And Mr. White is like, actually, no, you're going to record a bunch of covers and you're going to record that thing you do in Spanish. And here's the thing. Here's a place where you as an artist can fuck yourself over. So try not to. You will be required to do some of those things. And if you do them well, then they let you do your own shit.
Yeah.
But you have to prove to them that they can trust you to follow directions so that you can then do your own shit. Remember this.
Yeah.
Be nice, play well with others, and collaborate.
Also remember that Jimmy at the end of this movie is signed to Playtone again and has a hit with Jimmy and the Herdsmen. So like,
Sure.
those people also sometimes get successful, even though they're not great and fun to be around.
Yeah, that is entirely possible.
Jimmy is talented. I really like this because every member of the band is their own like archetype, right?
Yeah.
Like Guy is the level-headed, smart, kind of coolish guy. Jimmy is the talented asshole.
Yes.
TB player is the guy who like just really wants to make his friends happy and be with his friends, but like
Right.
has a real life to get back to in August.
Sure.
Steve Zahn's the guitar player who just really is kind of insane.
He's the wild card. He's the party monster. It's great.
I have a very specific theory about the way Tom Hanks wrote the Steve Zahn character.
Okay.
And I think because this movie is like Jimmy hates the marketing stuff you have to do.
Yep.
So this is my thought on it. Every one of the characters is a version of Tom Hanks.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
I think
so-
that's incredibly accurate.
Yeah, so like Jimmy is the Tom Hanks that is like the artist and hates doing the marketing shit because he just wants to be making his art
Yep.
and moving on. Guy is the Tom Hanks that we probably always see, and that is like the level-headed, smart business guy who has a lot of charm, right?
Right.
You have the bass player who is like an aloof, sort of just friendly person who like is unassuming and doesn't care. And then you have Steve Zahn, who I think is saying everything Tom Hanks wishes he could say in those marketing like junkets.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's always unhinged and funny.
Yes.
And it's like these jokes that Tom Hanks like wishes he could say when he's asked for the 50th time. So what was it like playing Forrest in Forrest Gump? You know what I'm saying? It's like that.
I feel like you could argue that it is the four versions of every artist. It is
Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, and Donatello. Fully.
Donatello.
Yes, I agree. It's the four humors, honestly. It is. You're right.
It's the pissy artist that you are inside when you're like, that joke sucks and you shouldn't have written it. Like that pissiness, right?
Yeah.
But then there's the side of like, oh, if I didn't care about my job, I'd say such wild shit and I would have fun with it because all of you are stupid. That's Lenny. Then there's the part of you that is you with your family when you're not on.
Yeah.
Which is the bass player.
Yeah.
And then there is Guy, the version that you have to be so that you can make money in this business.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all contain multitudes.
We do.
Deep inside all of us, sometimes there's a Jimmy. But yes, so Jimmy doesn't want to record anything, so he does the very famous, I quit. I quit.
Yeah.
I quit, Mr. White. We find out that Lenny got married in Vegas. He's so happy. And he's like tipping people with chips.
By the way, this whole movie, I was like, I'm not sure this counts for a Romantic the Pod. And then when I saw Steve Zahn's wedding, I was like, oh yeah, Steve Zahn gets married. This totally counts.
There's a wedding.
Yeah.
And also the last kiss in this movie, I think, is one of the most romantic ever.
I'll say from here on out, it does get romantic. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also love this section where Mr. White is like, because the band breaks up, basically.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Mr. White's like, well, you're all in breach of contract. And Guy is like, oh, shit. And he's like, nobody's going to jail. Because that's absolutely, no one gives a shit.
He's even smiling. Like Mr. White's like sort of laughing about it.
Yeah.
Wolfman leaves and he's like, I'm sorry, I'll see you later. And when Tom Hanks' character's like, cool, Wolfman, call me. We'll do something later in the week. And he's just like going about his day because this shit happens all the time,
All
you
the
know?
time.
And he's like, I don't care. We're covered in this scenario. What are you doing? You want to like get some studio work? Like that's sort of the vibe.
Yeah.
He's not mad at all at Guy.
Yeah. But he does in this section, he says, Faye is special, huh? And he's like, yeah. And we see her packing her stuff because they're out of the hotel by the afternoon. Nothing you can do about that because the band broke up. And so we see Guy stay.
Well, Tom Hanks invites him to. He's like,
Yeah.
I've never been in a record studio before. It's like the first time I have a hit record.
Right.
And I've never been in a record studio.
And my band just broke up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like-
and so he's like, hey, I don't mind if you hang around. You know, we were going to record, so feel free to just like, you know, play around, which I would fully totally do. I mean, he's playing the same drum set it was before, which is the like ivory sparkle Ludwig classic maple kit. And man, I would definitely go play.
Yeah.
You're crazy. Yeah.
Well, and he plays, and the guy recording it or in the booth is like, do you want to lay it down? And he's like, no, I was just playing around. But then Del Paxton shows up and they're like, no, let's record this. Like the two of us just shitting around playing I Am Spartacus.
So he does like mention that, oh, that's just a thing I'm working on. It's called I Am Spartacus, and Del is right there, and he's like, well, let's like lay it down or whatever.
Yeah.
Because he's in another studio. He's in Studio C, I think is what he says.
Right.
And this is such a cool moment, like
because it's live instead of the album he was playing along to in the beginning.
Yes, it is. It is like a live version of his dream from when he was playing in the basement of his dad's store, right?
Right.
But it's also like that peer acknowledges you as like, oh no, you can play at this level. Let's play at this level.
We can play together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that has to have felt so good for that character. You know what I'm saying? For like Guy's character. And I think that sort of informs the trajectory his life takes.
Absolutely. And he gets back to the hotel with a box of records, which means he recorded it, they pressed it, they laid it down, or master tapes is probably what he's got. And he runs into Lamar, who's like, hey, your friend already checked out and Faye is in the coffee shop alone and you just going to let her sit there alone? And he's like, oh my God, no, she's still here? Great. So he goes into the coffee shop and they have a conversation where he's like, I just had a really great, moment. I got to play with my mentor. He thinks I can make it. I think I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I guess I'll go home because I don't think there's anything left for me here.
I guess I'm going to go back to Erie, PA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she walks out of the coffee shop and they hug. And I think he has this moment of like, nah, we're going to get all of it today.
I really like that, the way it like, they are friends, and she like kisses him and hugs him. And she's like, none of this would have happened without you.
Right.
And she did just like lose her relationship of like 2, maybe 3 years at this point.
Sure.
So like she does go on to clarify, and I mean that in a good way. Like, I am so happy you came into our life and we got to go on this journey.
Yes.
And she kisses him on the cheek and like hugs him, and he like really leans into that hug.
Right.
And he just, I think does a really good job of like, you can see him weighing the option of, should I ask her to stay?
Yeah.
And she eventually leaves, and then he goes out to get her.
He goes out to get her.
So it's really romantic. I really love it. I really do.
Yeah. With the incredible line of, when was the last time you were decently kissed? I mean, truly, truly kissed. And when I texted you this line earlier today, I got the year wrong. And then when I was watching the movie later, I was like, damn it, I fucked it up. But it was Dave Gammelgard, New Year's Eve, 1961. And he goes,
yeah,
okay. And then they kiss multiple times. It's a darn good one. And then the implication is they check back into that hotel.
Yes.
Good for them.
They ask Lamar to watch their shit. They're like, we're going to go pound it out real quick. You mind watching that stuff? And he's like, that's what I do, baby. Lamar is never not the best.
Yes.
I did love that, like, after she says David Gamblebaum or whatever that.
Dave Gammelgard.
Yeah, like that New Year's Eve party. He waits. Like, it just seemed like he was like, man, he was a good kisser. I don't know if I could.
Yeah.
All right. I'll try and beat it. And he does. I mean, I don't think when she kissed David Gamblegarm or whatever, Lamar did 2 reaction takes to it.
Right.
And it's like the reaction tape of like, attaboy. And then after the attaboy reaction take, he does like a, ooh, nice. Ooh. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. But you have to just watch this guy be amazing in this movie. He's wonderful.
Yes. Anyway, from here we go to the epilogue.
Yeah, but it's sort of like, and that's the movie.
But then
also while we're getting credits, we're getting like the title cards of what happened to all of them, right?
Right.
I actually wrote them down if you just want me to read them, Paige.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So it's Guy and Faye Patterson were married on August 30th, 1965. They raised 4 children in Venice, California before moving to Bainbridge Island, Washington. They founded the Puget Sound Conservatory of Music, where Guy teaches jazz composition. So like, That's like a perfect life for those two characters. James Mattingly II and his new band, The Herdsmen, made 3 gold albums for the Playtone label. He is now a record producer in Los Angeles, California. TB Player, or the bass player, served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, receiving the Purple Heart for wounds sustained at the siege of Khe Sanh, which I might have butchered, sorry. He is a building contractor in Orlando, Florida. That dude just had like an amazing and heroic and normal life. You know what I'm saying? And then, who is this Leonard, the manager of the Golden Eagle Hotel
Lenny.
and Casino? Oh, that's Steve Zahn's character. That's
Yeah.
right. So Steve Zahn's character, I forgot his name is Lenny, is the manager of the Golden Eagle Hotel and Casino in Nevada. He is currently single. Anyway, so that's what happens to everybody. But Paige, having seen the movie and we talked about the movie, what'd you think about That Thing You Do?
Still one of my favorites.
I think it's Tom Hanks' best movie, which is saying something. The dude's in a lot of great movies.
It's definitely my favorite Tom Hanks movie. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
I feel like he's won Oscars and people would probably debate me on quality, but I definitely think as a director, this is absolutely his best movie.
Yeah, he doesn't really direct a ton. He doesn't really write a ton, but I do think this is the best of those 2 categories for him.
Yeah.
And I do see what you're saying. Like, favorite is more a matter of opinion.
Right.
And best is more a matter of like quality and like the way it impacted the industry and all that stuff. So you're right. That's probably more fair way to look at it. But this is definitely my favorite, I'll say.
Yes. Yeah.
And there are a lot of great Tom Hanks movies.
Yeah. I would say by and large, most.
Yeah.
Most Tom Hanks movies, generally good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got to see this movie. Like, it's so good. The music's great. It's fun. Steve Zahn makes every scene watchable. Like, it's great. If you haven't seen it, watch it. But yeah, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. Love it so much.
But Paige, do you have any fun facts for us?
Yes. Quite a few. So I will pick and choose.
Well, hit us with your fun facts.
Pick and choose
Wolfman,
fun facts. So this is not only Tom Hanks' writer-director debut, but it's also Tom Everett Scott's first film. And Tom Hanks initially didn't want to hire him because he thought that Tom Everett Scott looked and felt character-wise too much like him.
Ooh, they do look kind of alike.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yes.
So he almost didn't get his first megastar job because he looked like the guy who just happened to write and be directing the movie.
Right. Well, and
He's so good in it, though. I mean, I get why he still got the job.
yes, I also think that this goes to this idea of all of these are shades of an artist where, yeah, you are bound to get one that is kind of like you, Tom Hanks. And he does become the like public facing version. And he has almost some of Tom Hanks's mannerisms in this too.
Yeah.
So Rita Wilson, Tom Hanks's wife, ultimately convinced him to hire Tom Everett Scott, which is pretty fun. Steve Zahn can sing and play guitar, so he did play and sing in this. Ultimately, it's not used in the final film, but he did play when filming. However, in Saving Silverman in 2001, his singing and playing is used. Tom Hanks, as we mentioned, wrote and directed this movie. He has said that he wrote this movie while on the promotional tour for Forrest Gump because he was bored during interviews.
Oh, man. Okay, so I was close. I was close.
Yes. Yeah. Now, let's talk about who we're actually hearing for the Wonders. Who are the actual Wonders? So, Adam Schlesinger, the bassist for what would become Fountains of Wayne, wrote the title song in response to a contest being held by the studio and played a demo, and that won and ended up being used in the movie. Now, ultimately, there are 2 versions. There's the one that is used in the movie, and then there is an alternate version that they also wrote that doesn't really get used in the movie, but is also called That Thing You Do, parentheses, I Need You, that is also by the same band. I think they wrote it as another sample, so it gets used in the credits. But those are both by Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne. The movie would ultimately be released very shortly after Fountains of Wayne's first album, but largely the sounds that you are hearing of the Wonders are what would become Fountains of Wayne. So occasionally when Adam was still alive, Fountains of Wayne would play as, not as the Wonders because they can't be them, but they would play songs from this movie live occasionally when they would do shows, which is very cool.
That is very cool.
So, and it's wild to watch a different band, but hear the sound you remember as the Wonders, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, because it's them singing, right? So it's not
Yes,
really,
yeah.
Jimmy, the actor, playing him singing. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's not Jonathan. I believe Sachek is how you pronounce his last name, but I might be wrong. So in the show in Pittsburgh, one of the other band names on the theater marquee is Marilyn Lavelle and the Geminis. This is a tribute to the wife of Apollo 13 astronaut Jim Lavelle, who Tom Hanks played in Apollo 13 and the NASA space program.
That's awesome.
Yep. Steve Zahn was the best man at Tom Everett Scott's wedding. That's just a fun little tidbit that I love.
That is awesome.
Yes. Now, Colin and Elizabeth Hanks, Tom and Rita's children, are both cameos in this movie. Colin Hanks walks Faye into the television studio, and I'm not entirely sure where Elizabeth is, but you can actually spot Colin pretty prominently.
I did not recognize him, and I've seen Colin in tons of stuff because he's an actor too.
He's very young. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Now, the bass player doesn't have a name. All references to him in the film are the bass player, and in the credits, he's TB player. Ironically, the bass player that replaced TB at the end of the movie was given two names, Scott Pell and Wolfman.
Yeah.
But during the 20th anniversary celebration of That Thing You Do, which was just a few years ago, Ethan Embry revealed that internally, he always considered the bass player's name to be Tobias, and that was his actor's secret, was that his actual name was Tobias.
Tobias Player, baby.
Yep.
By the way, it's been 30 years since this movie came out. 31, technically.
Yeah.
So that 20-year reunion was 11 years ago.
Pandemic made it all, we
Mushed
lost like
together.
4 years in there.
Yeah.
So the four actors playing the Wonders rehearsed as a band for 8 weeks to get the feel of performing, even though their performances were dubbed by other musicians. Who do you think the first person to be cast for this movie was?
I mean, I'm going to say Steve Zahn for sure. Well, I mean, Tom Hanks because he wrote it. But like outside of that, like Tom always knew he was going to be in this movie.
Yeah, probably. But apart from Tom Hanks, Charlize Theron was the first.
That
to
doesn't
get
surprise
cast.
me. I mean, she was young in Hollywood, so it doesn't surprise me that she didn't have like a bigger role. But like she was always going to be a star.
Yeah, and she was the first actress to audition for her part too. So she was like first.
Damn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Captain Geach and the Shrimp Shack Shooters is named after two seafood restaurants near Beaufort, South Carolina, where many scenes in Forrest Gump were filmed. Captain Geach's was on Ladies Island, but is now closed, and the Shrimp Shack is still open for business on St. Helena Island.
I love that. I love that he like baked in so many like Easter eggs from like his life, like the movies he's been in and stuff like that into this one that he was writing. I love it.
Including full versions, alternative versions, and live versions, and snippets of the song. The song, That Thing You Do, is heard 11 times in the movie.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, you do hear it a lot.
You hear it a lot.
It's a great song, though.
But you only hear it full twice. Once at the talent show and once on TV at the end.
Yeah.
The instruments, the Oneaters... Hey, that's Onetters. The instruments the Wonders were playing before becoming successful are all common budget instruments from 1964. Lenny plays a silver tone guitar that was sold by Sears Roebuck.
Yep.
And the bass player plays a Dan Electro bass.
Yeah.
Both things they could have afforded on minimum wage salaries at the time. Allegedly, the I Quit song was made up on the spot during the audition and got Jonathan, I've always heard Sachek, and I don't know if that's right at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel bad.
I can tell you just from a drummer perspective that even like the hardware, like the pedal he's using for his bass drum it's like a Speed King pedal. It's very iconic from the 60s. Like it's definitely, they definitely got one or a recreation of a 60s like drum kick pedal.
No, they got one because once they chart in the movie, they actually replace all their new instruments that were historically accurate to that year, including amps and pedals.
Yeah.
So everything.
Yeah, I mean, even like the guitar stands and stuff were like of the era. The cymbals didn't have like the logos printed on them like they do now. In fact, when I was touring, I would, until I got a simple sponsor, I buffed off the name of the symbol so it looked more like the 60s version because I liked it. I thought it looked cooler.
Yeah. So once they chart, The bass player has a Fender Jazz bass.
Yeah.
Lenny has a Fender Jaguar, and Jimmy plays a Rickenbacker 360-12.
And that's when I think the drummer gets the Ludwig Classic Maple.
Yes, that is. Now, the part of Troy Chesterfield, who is one of the TV announcers for their final Hollywood TV showcase, is Peter Scolari, who is Tom Hanks' co-star from Bosom Buddies.
There was a Bosom Buddies reunion in this movie?
Yep.
That's awesome. I've actually never seen a frame of Bosom Buddies, but I know what it's sort of about.
Yeah.
And it's like his first TV show. It's like Tom Hanks' TV show.
It is.
It would be like Ryan Reynolds doing a Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place reunion in the new Deadpool movie.
Exactly, which they, who knows? There's a lot of cameos in the movie. Now, the story of the Wonders, if you had the original soundtrack on CD, it told extra epilogue in the CD folder.
What?
So I have one of these at my house, but the story is continued in the liner notes. So it's revealed that after they were on TV, that Thing You Do rises to number 2 on the Billboard charts, and even though they're still broken up, they have a number 2 record with the company.
But it never got to number 1. That's
never gets
so
to number
funny.
1.
That's great.
Never gets to number 1. Now, Jimmy's career with the Herdsmen is detailed a little further.
Okay.
And there's a couple songs on the soundtrack. One of them is She Knows It, but then they credit them with I Need You, That Thing You Do, which is the alternate That Thing You Do song.
Yeah.
And the liner notes are attributed to Mr. White writing them, who supposedly later becomes the president of the Playtone label. And I found a couple notes in a lengthened cut that I have never seen and don't know where to find, that there's a reveal that potentially Mr. White is homosexual, but I've never seen that cut and I don't know where to find it.
Interesting.
But I did keep finding references to it, that it was a deleted scene because this is too early in the 90s for people to have let that through. But
yeah.
supposedly that is in there somewhere.
I can also see Tom Hanks doing that just because he did Philadelphia, where he very famously played a gay actor or gay man. So
yes, yeah.
I don't think, even though it was the 90s, that he would shy away from that.
No, but I do think the studio might.
Oh,
and that's
no,
probably why it hit the cutting room floor.
I definitely understand
Yeah.
why in the 90s it didn't make the final cut. I also can totally buy that he would write that into a movie.
Oh, well, and it was a reference to one of the Beatles' managers, who was closeted and then later found out.
Yeah.
So there is a reason to include it. It is historically accurate for what they're kind of trying to portray.
Oh, yeah.
Now, in the scene where he's got a pig in competition at the livestock pavilion and he's going to win that blue ribbon, the FFA, the Future Farmers of America, loaned members-only jackets to the actors so that the state science fair would look more authentic.
Oh, that's awesome.
The director of the Rick and Anita movie featuring Captain Keach of the Shrimp Shack Shooters, the director is played by Jonathan Demme, who directed Tom Hanks in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Tom Hanks is an Oakland Raiders fan, being a local boy to our town side of the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And so he named the pizza place Villapiano's after former Raider linebacker Phil Villapiano.
That's so funny. Sorry, that's amazing.
So I'll end on this fun one.
Okay.
While trying to decide on a name for the band, the names in Jimmy's notebook are the Dollars, the Lords of Erie, the Pistoons,
The Pistoons?
Pistunes. So Pistoons? Pistons. It's probably Pistons, but Pistoons.
It's got to be
Thorns,
Pistons, right? Like, please.
Right?
Yeah.
The puns. The Thorns, the Mozarts, the Echoes, the Ticks, the Didactics, and the Flannels. And some of those would go on to be other bands, but they are his potential disregarded band names. Now, there are a ton of other fun facts about this movie, and they do a reunion every 5 to 10 years where they get everyone together and they talk about the movie. So there's a lot more out there, but we have limited time, and this is already 2.5 hours long. So those are your fun facts.
Well, thank you for those fun facts page. Let's talk a little bit about box office. So what do you think the production budget was for That Thing You Do in 1996?
I could be wrong, but I have always been under the belief that this cost somewhere between $5 and $7 million.
Paige, you are in fact wrong, but I'm happy to report in a very impressive direction. The budget for this movie was $2.5 million.
This looks incredible.
I know.
For $2.5 million.
It's such a good movie for that budget. Now, this was 1996. $2.5 million is actually just over $5 million today.
Okay.
But still, it looks amazing, right? Now, this movie premiered on October 4th, 1996. It was number 3 in the theater that weekend. It was beat by First Wives Club. And then The Glimmer Man was number 2. That Thing You Do was number 3. Number 4 was D3, The Mighty Ducks.
Ooh.
And number 5 was Extreme Measures. Paige, what do you think That Thing You Do brought in its opening weekend?
Correct me if I'm wrong. It never rises above number 3. This did not do great in theaters. It is a sleeper hit that became a cult classic. So I'm going to say opening weekend, it makes $1.25 million.
Paige, I am happy to report it made $6.2 million.
Good for them.
Which, if you remember, that's like...
On a 2.5 budget,
Yeah,
that's great.
They made more than twice their budget back in their opening weekend. It's great. That's a great return. Although, and Paige, you sort of alluded to this, it was never, again, 3 in the theaters, but for its second and third week, it was 5th.
Right.
And then its 4th week, it dropped to 9th, and then it was sort of quickly out of the top 10. But it did stay in theaters from October 4th all the way through January 24th, because they were in theaters a lot longer then. Like you even mentioned earlier in this episode that your dad saw it in theaters on his own and then sort of came home and rented it at Blockbuster and brought it home for you guys to watch because it was in theaters for so long. Anyway, so Paige, what do you think That Thing You Do brought in domestically at the box office?
Domestically, for being in the theaters that long, I'm going to say this brings in about $22 million.
Ooh, Paige, that's a great guess. It was $25.8 million.
Nice.
It also made another $8.7 million internationally for a total of $34.5 million, which again, on a $2.5 million budget is great.
Yes.
But if you adjust for inflation, that 34.5 becomes almost 70. It's like $69.4 million today. But that is your box office. Paige, do you want to hit us with that romance scale?
Our romance scale is a scale of 1 to 4 of how romantic we found this movie today. Todd, where are you at?
I'll give it a 2. I do love the scene at the end, when she sort of starts the great lines by saying, "Gentlemen, I forgot what you fellas look like." And then he asks her if she's been kissed good or when was the last time she got kissed well.
Yes.
Like that shit is romantic. I liked it. But it's like, it's not about that until like the third act.
Right.
So I'll give it a 2. But I love this movie.
I love it too. It's a great one. I give most of, like 90% of the movie gets a 1. That last kiss scene gets a 2.
That's fair.
How about that?
That is fair.
Right?
Yeah, I'll take it.
And that's our romance scale.
Thank you, Paige. So this week you made us watch That Thing You Do. As we continue, it's Paige's birthday month, so she's picking whatever she wants to watch.
That's fair.
So what are we going to watch next week, Paige?
I fully forgot that I had to pick.
Isn't that just like the birthday girl? You know, like just makes everything about her for the whole month and then forgets to complete the assignments. Well, everybody, Future Todd breaking in here to let you know that Paige did decide what we'd be watching for next week. And she let me know, thankfully, that we will be watching Showgirls. So please make sure you get that homework done and watch the 1995 erotic drama Showgirls featuring Elizabeth Berkley. Check it out and then check back for that episode next week.
Hey, do you have any reviews for us, Todd?
I do. I'm going to do this most recent Spotify comment from our True Romance episode, and I'm only doing it because somebody fully lost their ass mind when they found out we were doing That Thing You Do.
God.
And it was Wombold. They were like, "That Thing You Do," all caps, and literally, A-H-H-H. My dad burned the CD for me as a kid. Lenny was my favorite. How could he not be?
Of course.
Love you both. Happy birthday month, Paige. So that's from Wombast.
Thank you.
Or Wombold 27. We also got this 5-star review on Apple Podcast, and that is from Ocho Bunny, and they say, regarding zombie tears.
Oh, okay.
Paige, you are correct. A zombie can produce new tears, and they would smell. Todd, seriously, how can a zombie make good smelling tears?
I feel like I logicked my way through that problem using zombie logic, and
I think I used real logic, and I think we just differ.
well, zombies aren't real, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I agree. Like, listen, I mean, we're never going to be able to test who's right.
That's fair.
But I am firmly in the zombie tears would not smell camp.
I mean, I think you're going to be really upset the first time you make a zombie cry, but hey, you'll have to wait and find that out when it happens.
How do you make a zombie cry?
You break its heart?
You tickle it? I don't know. Anyway, but Ocho Bunny, thank you so much for, I guess, siding with Paige, you traitor. But if you want to maybe side with me and or just leave us an awesome 5-star review and or Spotify comment, do that and I'll read it on next episode, maybe. So yeah, if you guys like this show and want to hear our other show where we talk about horror movies, that is The Horror Virgin. That's the only other podcast I am on, but Paige is also on Cult Podcast, which you can find at Cult Podcast. And you can find us on social media. I am at Todd J. Awesome, literally everywhere. Paige is at Paige Wesley on Instagram.
No, it's at Rampage Wesley on Instagram and TikTok, at Paige Wesley on Twitter.
That's right. All right. So that's where you can find Paige. If you want to find the show, we are at Romancing the Pod Show, right?
Yep, Romancing Pod Show on Twitter.
Well, and Instagram, right?
And Instagram, but it's show SHO because character limits. If you start typing Romancing the Pod, it'll come up.
It'll definitely come up on Instagram. I don't know about Twitter because I haven't posted on Twitter in a hot ass minute. So like, who knows? But that is where you can find more of us. So yeah, guys, give us a follow. Support the show any way you can. We'd love it.
Smash that like button.
Hell yeah.
And that's going to be it for us, you guys on Paige.
And I'm Todd.
You complete us to thingpletion.
Bye. Have an amazing week, nerds.
La 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 la.